Vincent is a famous hunter in the region with extensive experience, a muscular build, and sharp perception. Vincent also has a beautiful wife named Olena, but unfortunately the two of them are unable to have children. A few years ago on a quiet night, Vincent kept hearing soft crying coming from the stable. At first he thought it was some wild animal, but when he brought his axe over, Vincent was shocked to see a fair-skinned, blonde-haired child wrapped in a diaper lying in the middle of the stable. Years went by and that child grew up, blonde hair, bright blue eyes, very beautiful and adorable. The boy was named Arion Chiron, the main character of our story. Vincent and Olena always regarded him as their own son, their precious treasure. Every day when Vincent went to the forest, he took his son along. While he chopped wood, Chiron would be absorbed in reading the magic books his father bought for him. Their family was warm like that, but the village children didn't seem to like Chiron very much. The reason was simple. He was always focused on reading books, plus he was very skinny and looked delicate like a girl. Nothing like Vincent's tall and strong appearance. The village gossips often said that Chiron was picked up somewhere by Vincent and his wife, and of course, because of that, the village kids also knew this. Although it was true that Chiron was adopted, Vincent couldn't accept people gossiping about the child he considered his treasure. Vincent always felt responsible for Chiron being distanced by the village kids. But of course, he couldn't just go and give each of them a beating. So to ease his guilt, he could only frequently take his son out to broaden his horizons. The next morning, Vincent took his son to Chris City, located in the outskirts of the Tomia Kingdom. It was Chiron's first time in the city, and the luxury and bustle dazzled him. Vincent still had some matters to handle, so he stopped the carriage in front of a fruit shop owned by an acquaintance named Marin and told his son to stay put until he returned. Although Chiron was usually well-behaved, this was his first time in the city, so Vincent kept reminding him not to go into shady alleys or get involved with the nobles before driving off. Chiron stayed at the fruit stall, trying to prove his usefulness by writing signs to help Marin. Marin seemed surprised that a rural kid like him could read and moreover looked very smart and quick-witted. While Marin was admiring this beautiful child, Chiron suddenly curiously asked, "Mr. Marin, do you know magic?" "What law no, I mean magic." Chiron excitedly held up the large magic book Vincent bought him. Marin laughed. "Kids will be kids. They all love those fancy things, like dragons, heroes, and wizards." But seeing Chiron's sparkling, hopeful eyes, Marin couldn't bear to disappoint him, so he pointed toward the alley ahead. "I don't know much about magic, but there are plenty of books about it over there." Chiron's eyes lit up as he looked in the direction Marin pointed. Behind the alley was a large bookstore with Marin's permission. He immediately ran toward it, but once inside, the haughty shopkeeper stopped him. She wouldn't let him touch the books on the shelves, saying, "These expensive books aren't for poor kids like you." Just then, the bookstore received a distinguished guest. The shop owner called him the head steward, though no one knew which prestigious family he served. But while the shopkeeper was busy attending to him, Chiron quickly flipped through some books on the shelf and found their content uninteresting. He tiredly left the store. Just then he saw a man carrying a box of books passing by. Chiron loved books, so he ran after the man, and what shocked him was that the man blatantly dumped the box of books into the trash. "So this is where Dad got the books for me." Chiron was stunned for a few seconds, then carefully picked up each book from the trash to look through. At that moment, laughter reached Chiron's ears. He turned and saw two noble girls happily chatting, each holding a book. Chiron was very curious why he was different from them, why his father told him not to interact with nobles before he left, and why were they free to read the books they liked while he was not. Thinking of that, Chiron unconsciously followed those two girls, but before he could catch up with them, he was stopped by a tall guard soldier. "Hey kid, this isn't a place for kids like you to hang around. Beyond this gate is an area reserved for nobles. Where is your father from head to toe?" "Oh, my father is just nearby," Chiron replied awkwardly. At that moment, another soldier came over, and just by glancing at Chiron, he found him suspicious because he didn't look like the local kids. They assumed Chiron was either an orphan or an accomplice of thieves, so they tried to drag him away for questioning, but he swiftly took off his outer coat and escaped. Chiron hid behind some bushes, his hair messy and clothes dirty, but he still felt lucky that he hadn't been caught. As he was about to pick up his shoes and return to Mr. Marin's place, Chiron heard voices coming from behind the large outer wall. "So now shall we discuss what magic is?" No, principal, please show us some fire-spitting magic." Some responded excitedly. Chiron looked up at the wall, which was 2 or 3 times taller than him, and of course he couldn't see anything. "Wait, is this the Magic Academy?" Excitement surged strongly inside him. Sharon pressed his ear to the wall, listening intently. Inside, the man called the principal was continuing to ask questions to his students, asking, "What is the most important thing when learning magic?" Some said knowledge, others said diligence. Some thought the most important was money, but no one had answered correctly yet. Sharon tried to listen carefully. Finally, he got the principal's answer: the most important thing when learning magic is clarity of mind. The noble-bearded students inside were all about his age. When they heard him mention clarity of mind, their faces all froze. "What is that?" The principal didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked back, "Is there anyone here who doesn't know what 1 + 1 equals?" "Of course, everyone knows it's 2. The students shouted. "Can anyone explain why it equals 2? The principal asked again. The students looked at each other. No one could answer. That strange feeling right now is clarity of mind. There was a time when people didn't know that 1 + 1 = and many scholars had to work hard just to prove it. But even without solid proof, we still understand that 1 + 1 right? That's because it's a law that always exists in the world. That's also why we don't need to learn it, because we automatically understand and accept it. And magic is the same. It has existed in this world from the beginning. We can feel and accept it through our clarity of mind. That's why it's more important than knowledge or diligence." The principal explained continuously. The kids inside the academy still hadn't fully grasped what he said. But Sharon, eavesdropping outside, felt his heart beating wildly. The most important thing when learning magic isn't money or noble status, but clarity of mind. So a kid like him could also become a great mage, right? Thinking this, Sharon felt both excited and nervous. And his heart almost jumped out of his chest when he heard the principal's voice asking the child behind the wall, "I want to hear your thoughts." Sharon was startled. He didn't think such a thick wall would still give him away. Now, should he run away or answer that question, especially looking as dirty and shabby as he did? Sharon was afraid the principal and kids inside would despise him, just like the bookstore owner and those 2 guards, looking down on him for being poor and dirty. But he also feared that if he missed this chance, he would regret it for life. And so, driven by some great motivation, Sharon used his small body to climb step by step up that wall. He looked truly shabby, but his eyes shone brightly. Sharon saw the principal of the Magic Academy sitting under a tree with several children. His appearance was very gentle, nothing like the bookstore owner or the guards. As soon as he saw Sharon, he spoke first. "Hello, are you here to play with me?" That noble headmaster's name, Ikmirov Alphaeus, a level 4 mage, and also the founder of the Alphaeus Magic Academy. Siren mustered all his strength to jump down from the wall. Then he slowly stepped toward the children sitting around. Anfia's kids were all from noble families, their appearance neat and tidy, very different from Siren. Some of them, just by looking at his appearance, immediately knew he was just a commoner. So they bluntly chased him away. But Headmaster Anpheus was different. "It's okay, come here." What did that old man just say that attracted the boy? The gentle demeanor of Headmaster Alpheus made Siren feel much less inferior. Although still quite shy, he dared to speak out his wish. "Hello, sir. I want to see magic. I've only seen it in books, but never witnessed it with my own eyes before." Before Anpheus could reply, the students around him started to chatter. They called Siren a liar. How can a commoner even read books? He also knew he had no voice here. So he bowed his head very low. "Please, sir, perform any magic. I just want to see magic with my own eyes." Anpheus laughed. "Haha, it's simple. I will show you a magic that can create wind." As soon as Anpheus finished speaking, a strong wind blew up, lifting Siren into the air. Not only him, the kids surrounding the headmaster were also blown up into the sky. But each of them seemed to really enjoy it. Only Siren was both frightened and confused. After reaching a certain height, he and the others started to fall down. While the others still looked very excited, Siren's group wanted to fall apart from fear. This was the first time he was falling freely in his life, and from such a terrifying height, too. Siren felt like he was about to shatter into pieces. Terrified, he shut his eyes tightly. After a long while, Siren no longer heard the wind whistling by his ears. Only the giggles of the children remained. Only then did he dare to open his eyes. He saw himself hovering about 1 meter above the ground. The magic school students were teasing him for being such a coward. Even Headmaster Alpheus couldn't hold back a hearty laugh upon seeing this scene. "How do you feel?" "That is what magic is." Siren landed safely, but his heart was still pounding with fear. So magic is like this. It's so advanced beyond the understanding that the book provided him. What exactly is magic, Headmaster? Siren still hadn't overcome the psychological shock. Well, asked Alpheus while stroking his long beard. He seemed to be looking for a simple example to explain to him. But Siren, too impatient, urged him, "Please tell me the truth." His tone was quite loud. Outsiders would think Siren was being rude to the headmaster. The noble students were very surprised, because no one had ever dared to raise their voice to Orpheus like that, not even the teachers. They were sure Orpheus would fly into a rage and punish Siren. But seeing Siren's intelligent face and bright eyes, Orpheus couldn't get angry. "Ha ha ha, if you want to know, then I will explain. It's a bit complicated." He stroked his beard while explaining to Siren what true magic is. It is something beyond common logic. In other words, it's an expansion of the mind to discover the truth of the world. It is something unrealistic, but maybe because of that, it's closer to the truth. Siren suddenly asked Orpheus, unable to hide the excitement on his face, because what Siren just said was something even the noble students here hadn't realized. "I read this in books, sir, but I have seen similarities across many books. Many ideas from great people were considered irrational and shunned by society. But in the end, they all had to accept that information as a newly discovered truth. So the truth was actually hidden within those irrational things. That's what I thought." Orpheus listened to him and kept nodding. It seemed he was very pleased with this smart and bright child. Although the circumstances were quite difficult, he still tried to absorb and filter the scarce information he had to truly understand the issue. It's just a pity that he was only a commoner. After all, resources could never compare to those noble children. To help Siren understand more about magic, Orpheus called over a pink-haired girl named Suman Ra and asked her to enter the spirit world. Then he took a handful of coins from his pocket and asked Suman to guess how many coins he was holding. Without much thought, Suman immediately answered the number 6, and surprisingly, her answer was completely correct. Siren was extremely amazed with 100,000 questions running through his head. Orpheus had anticipated he would think that way. So he explained that when a mage focuses their mind, they become light enough to sense everything around them. Some more advanced mages can even count the number of leaves on a tree from a great distance. This is called an extremely sensitive mental state, or the spirit world. While explaining, Orpheus kept changing the number of coins in his hand, and Sumin still guessed correctly every time. A mage who can enter the spirit world perceives the outside world through supernatural abilities. And eventually they can even dominate reality itself. Not only limited to small things like counting coins, they can also sense the entire situation happening right before them. This is the basic skill Orpheus wanted Siren to learn if he wanted to become a mage. Because not everyone can enter this spirit world state. First, you need to be able to sense yourself. Try practicing in a quiet place. Then break apart the vague thoughts in your mind. When you can do that, a new world will be revealed for you to explore. Do you understand what I mean? If you can't sense yourself, then you won't be able to resist your own thoughts, right? Siren asked Orpheus again. Constantly surprised by Siren's questions, he asked him to try sensing himself right here. After all, if Siren can't do that, then he's not suited for learning magic. But what exactly is the self? Siren was beginning to search for the answer to that question. While the brain is just an organ, the senses and reality you perceive cannot exceed the brain's concept. Siren didn't need to analyze its meaning just to feel it. After quite a while like this, Siren opened his eyes. In front of him was Principal Orpheus and the group of students. But something seemed different. Orpheus looked at him expectantly and asked what he felt. Siren was drenched in sweat. He answered quietly, "I heard all the sounds." The kids burst out laughing. Of course you have to hear sounds. Orpheus didn't show much expression but seemed somewhat disappointed. He thought Siren couldn't do it just as he had initially predicted. Because what happens inside the spirit world is in a different dimension. There people perceive things through completely different senses. Like synesthesia syndrome, a neurological condition where the brain processes data through multiple senses simultaneously. At that time, a person could smell sounds, taste light, and feel landscapes through their skin. But Siren just said he heard sounds. That proves he hadn't entered the spirit world. Anyway, this is not something everyone can do. Orpheus slowly stood up and patted Siren's head to comfort him. Well done. If you keep practicing in the future, you'll be able to hear many more sounds. Then Orpheus turned to his students and said, "All right, the special lesson is over. Let's get back to school." After leaving, Orpheus still felt regretful. Because finding a smart child like Siren was not easy at all. He just felt that if Siren had been born into a noble family and raised from a young age, what he could achieve might surpass these kids by far. As for Siren, he climbed over the wall to return outside. But Siren's mood was extremely chaotic, because you know that just now you entered the spirit world. Siren only told Orpheus that he heard a sound, but he didn't say everything that happened after. that after the crashing sound, he felt like he was torn into hundreds of pieces and scattered across the world. He felt that he was no longer a small entity, but that he was the entire world itself. That feeling made Siren's tears flow unconsciously. He couldn't help but tremble before the vastness of this world. It was just a brief moment, but Siren really had escaped his body and became formless, merging with the world. He ran headlong as if trying to release the feelings inside. And because of that emotional chaos, Siren accidentally crashed into a passerby. Only he fell backward because the other person was quite tall. Siren frantically apologized, but the other seemed unwilling to forgive him. There were a few others with him, and the one Siren hit immediately grabbed his collar. "Are you crazy or what? If you hit someone, you have to pay, right?" I'm sorry. Siren stammered nervously. "Sorry, how else could it be enough? You're from the Wolf Gang, aren't you? You came here to take my life." Siren didn't understand what the Wolf Gang was that the other mentioned, but if this kept up, at best, he'd get beaten up, at worst, he'd lose his life. In his panic, he then heard, "What are you guys doing?" "Something interesting. Miss Army, why are you here? Are you bored again?" The thug quickly turned to greet the newcomer, but didn't let go of Siren's collar. The one called Miss Army was a young noblewoman with red hair who caught Siren's attention. He originally wanted to ask for help, but when he saw she was a noble, he immediately gave up on the idea. As for the thugs, after greeting Army, they immediately went back to the main issue. First, Siren took a full knee strike. He immediately collapsed to the ground, trembling in pain all over. Bullying a small kid like Siren didn't shame these guys. On the contrary, it excited them. The whole gang started turning back to continuously provoke Siren with crude words. They even insulted his parents with unpleasant words. Seeing them talk about his parents like that, Siren's eyes changed from fear to full of resentment. They noticed he was angry, but Siren had no chance to retaliate. Because right after he got kicked straight in the head, the big guys all swarmed together to gang up on a child. Siren couldn't fight back, only held his head and endured. After a while, Amy couldn't stand it anymore. Ben stepped closer and stopped. "Look, if this keeps up, he'll really die." Then she sat down next to Siren and asked, "Are you okay?" "I didn't do anything, I just happened to pass by." Siren seemed to feel a glimmer of hope from this girl. Ben cried while explaining. "Yeah, stop it already." Umi said, "Isn't there anything better to do? Thought we'd be saved, but this girl who looks so pure is actually even more twisted than those thugs." In her eyes, Siren was really just a toy. "We planned to beat him up and then sell him to the village in the south, since he's just a commoner, so no worries," one thug suggested. Siren immediately fell into despair. He began to regret not staying put with Master Mon at that time. If they really plan to sell you, isn't it possible you'll never see your parents again, your whole life? Amy's eyes judged Siren for a long moment. Then suddenly she gave a bizarre smile. Slaves shouldn't have flaws, right? If so, why don't I just check for myself? The thugs surrounding her immediately burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha! Miss Army, you planning to check him out? Did you hear that kid? She's telling you to take your clothes off." Hearing the words "take clothes off," Amy's expression changed, and she automatically stepped back. She originally just wanted to mess with Siren a bit, then let him go. Didn't expect these crazy guys to actually want to do it. Moreover, Ciro looked like he was about to go crazy. The threatening laughter of the thugs gradually faded in Ciro's mind. Instead, he began to hear the flapping of a fly's wings passing by more clearly. Then the space seemed to freeze. Ciro felt his mind drifting back a few hours. He saw Principal Alphas and a group of students sitting under that ancient tree, and the principal was chanting a spell to create wind to show him what magic looked like. Ciro no longer doubted. He was inside his own memory. Alphas' spell became clear to him as well. Everything poured into Ciro's mind and turned into his own knowledge. While Ciro's soul left his body to return to the world of memories in the real world, he was frozen like a piece of wood. The thug, seeing Ciro with no reaction, went crazy again and grabbed his collar. "You little brat, are you deaf? Do I look like I'm joking or what?" Only Amy noticed something was wrong here. She hurriedly shouted, "Stop," but it was already too late. Ciro, relying on the memories he had just found, unconsciously cast the wind spell. It was just like what Alphas did back then. He created a tornado large enough to lift all the thugs into the air. By the time Ciro regained his composure, they were already beginning to fall freely. And from such a height, it was no surprise that they broke arms and legs on the way down. With one move, Ciro defeated nearly 10 thugs who were several times his size, though he didn't even know exactly how he did it. Amy screamed and rushed over to pull Ciro back to his senses. "What the hell are you? Where did you learn magic? How does a commoner like you even have magic?" At that moment, a few people came running over because of the loud noise nearby. Amy, wary of the crowd and complications, quickly fled first. Ciro was amazed to see her move like a squirrel, darting up to the rooftop and disappearing. But that didn't matter. What mattered now was the mess in front of Ciro, and he bet the newcomers wouldn't let him explain. Ciro wanted to escape. He couldn't get caught again. So he started running headlong out of the alley. The first time stepping out of the village had left Ciro with too many terrifying experiences. He felt this world was too frightening. He just wanted to quickly return to his parents' arms, that's all. Meanwhile, Amy had returned home. Her family was the Kamas clan, a first-class noble family. Ami came back in a huff. Because she had been defeated by a commoner kid, the Kamas family head Sakura immediately guessed she had caused trouble again when he saw her return. "Why are you home so early? Did you skip school today?" "Amy, I've learned everything." "There's nothing fun at all, Father." Amy answered sullenly and then went up to her room. Sakura was at his wit's end with his daughter. "I don't know when you'll ever mature. Even if you're a genius, you shouldn't be so careless. One day you'll be surpassed." Sakura spoke casually, but it seemed his last sentence struck a nerve with Amai. Today she really had been surpassed by a commoner kid, no less. Seeing his daughter suddenly so silent was unusual for Sakura. Usually if he criticized her like that, Amy would have thrown a fit, but today was different. She was quiet for a long time, then suddenly asked a question that was totally unlike her father Magic. "Do you know anyone at the Magic Academy who could recommend me?" After that stormy trip, Ciro finally found his father. The moment he found Vincent, he threw himself into his arms crying and saying he was lost. They returned to the small village, but from then on, Ciro's personality changed completely, and winter arrived. The next day when Vincent got home, he saw his wife sitting with a towel. Olina said that Ciro had gone to the logging area to chop more wood while a heavy snowstorm was falling. Worried, Vincent went to find him. Although they were not biologically father and son, Vincent had raised Ciro and considered him his own since he was little. With that fatherly love, he could clearly sense the change in his son after his first time visiting the city in spring. And even though Ciro only said he got lost, Vincent always felt that things were not that simple. At that moment, he was in the woods chopping wood. Even after many days, Ciro still couldn't forget the day he unconsciously unleashed magic to attack those thugs, and since then he hasn't been able to use it again. That magic was instinctively summoned, but since he lacked basic knowledge of magic, he couldn't succeed a second time. Nevertheless, now Ciro had mastered entering the spirit world. In the spirit world, he could sense everything just like in the real world. From feeling shape scent, he could perceive everything related to the tree before him at once, and he could even see its weakest point. This helped Ciro swing his axe once and fell a tree 5 or 6 times his height. Vincent saw this entire scene clearly. He was an experienced hunter and bet that what he saw was thunderstrike, the phenomenon of an axe felling a tree by hitting its weak spot. But how could Ciro, such a small, skinny boy, do something even a skilled hunter like Vincent struggled to do? Watching his little son carefully saw a tree in the cold winter, Vincent couldn't hold back tears. Meanwhile, Ciro seemed very excited because it was the first time he successfully created a thunderstrike. After countless times chopping wood, like the day he successfully summoned that magic, Ciro knew. He wasn't as lucky as noble kids, but that didn't stop his desire to seek foundational knowledge of magic. Tomorrow, the day after, and the days following, Ciro would keep repeating these exercises to sense magic, believing his chance would come someday soon. Perseverance truly brought Ciro some achievements. Time passed. 3 years later, Ciro was much taller, his hair longer, and he had successfully created perfect thunderstrikes every time. By then, he seemed to have merged with nature itself. Ciro could even feel the trembling of each bush, the movements of insects, and the nutrient absorption through the roots of every tree. But Ciro knew that wasn't all. If he kept training, a new world would open up to him. Today, he spent 5 hours meditating in the forest to train his spirit world. After achieving the desired results, Ciro carried the pile of firewood back home. On the way, he saw 2 white horses. Such precious horses usually wouldn't appear in this remote area. In front of Ciro's house was a luxurious carriage parked. He immediately guessed his family had guests, but when he entered, both his father and mother looked very tense, making Ciro worried. "You're back. Come in and meet this person," Vincent called. The owner of that fancy carriage was the assassin steward of the Ocean family. He introduced himself as Timuran. Ciro didn't know why he came to find him, since the Ocean family was the second highest noble family in the kingdom. Still polite, Timuran carefully examined Ciro's face and figure, like inspecting a valuable item. "Can you read?" he asked. "I learned a bit when I was young." Timuran seemed thoughtful, then nodded and continued inspecting. "Ciro, you seem well brought up. Just a hunter's son, but you can read and you're a good kid too. Wait, can you explain why you're here? Cyrus seemed impatient, and finally Timorin revealed the real purpose of his visit. He was here to recruit Cyrus to work for the Ocean family. Although Cyrus didn't understand how he knew about him, the job was to move a total of 10,000 books out of the main library of the mansion, including many important volumes. This would be done within 2 years. The transportation would be assigned to others, but classification would be done only by Timorin and Cyrus. Just hearing the word library, Cyrus's heart pounded wildly. However, Timorin added, "The only people who know about this are your family. If even one book leaks outside or news about this gets out, both your life and your family's will be wiped out." Only then did Cyrus understand why his parents looked so worried. Of course, because this was so dangerous, the Ocean family agreed to pay a large sum, an amount Vincent could never earn in his lifetime as a hunter. He certainly wasn't so greedy for money that he'd be willing to sell his precious son. He agreed to Timorin's request only so his son could freely read the books in the Ocean family library. The amount he was paid was truly huge, so it was worth it for him to take care of his son all these years. Timorin seemed very pleased with Cyrus, then turned to Vincent and said words that basically implied Vincent had only cared for Cyrus all these years in exchange for money. So he immediately stood up and slammed the table. "I'm not doing this for money. I just want our Cyrus to be able to fulfill his dreams." But then Timorin suddenly burst out laughing heartily. "Why are you overthinking this so much? You think the boy will have a career? Stop dreaming. If you're not doing it for money, then what reason is there? You're begging me to choose your son, huh?" His tone was full of mockery because he said the boy could read books. Vincent almost shouted, recalling that when Cyrus was little, Alina had taught him a few words just for fun, but unexpectedly by age 6 he had started reading books on his own to learn. Vincent still remembered clearly how well-behaved and adorable Cyrus looked then, but more importantly, he was a smart child. Every time he looked into his son's beautiful, delicate eyes and saw him focused on reading, Vincent wondered whether his foster son might be of noble lineage. And if he had been raised by a noble family instead of a hunter family like theirs, would his life have been better? Throughout those days, Vincent struggled mentally and emotionally. On one hand, he wanted to keep Cyrus as his own and raise him to be a hunter, a woodcutter like himself. But when he saw Cyrus spending hours a day in the forest chopping wood, he felt very uneasy inside. So Vincent was the one who took the initiative to seek out Timorin after hearing that the Ocean family was looking for a literate commoner's son. All Vincent wanted was for Cyrus to go there and read the books he wanted, so he begged Timorin. But unexpectedly, this haughty man thought Vincent wanted to sell his son for money. That made Vincent truly angry. "I don't need any money. If I'd known you'd look at me that way, I wouldn't have begged you. Now get out of my house immediately." Timorin was proud too, so being insulted like that, he immediately left. But just as he reached the door, Cyrus quickly called him back. He said he would take the job no matter how dangerous it was, or how much Timorin looked down on his family. "Are you serious? I'm not threatening you. Just so you know, even a tiny rumor could cost you your life," Timorin warned, but even so, Cyrus was determined. He affirmed that he could keep quiet in all circumstances, and if anything went wrong, he would not blame Timorin or the Ocean family. Seeing the young man's determination, Timorin didn't bother to advise him further. He said he would send a car to pick Cyrus up within a week. During that time, if he refused or changed his mind, that was fine. But once Cyrus stepped into the Ocean mansion, he would not be allowed to leave until the job was done. After giving these instructions to Cyrus, Timorin didn't linger any longer. Only the 3 of the Vincent family were left frantically asking their son, "Cyrus, why did you agree to such a request? Those bastards just want someone to die for them." This was his father's fault. "Father will take responsibility, so you must refuse immediately." Vincent's face was covered in tears, and now Cyrus began to cry too. But he wasn't crying because he blamed Vincent for pushing him into the fire, but because he was grateful for the great gift his father had given him. Because stepping into the Ocean family library and reading those rare magic books was an opportunity Cyrus never dared to dream of in his lifetime. "Thanks again, Dad. Thank you so much." Cyrus cried but wore a bright smile on his lips. Vincent hurriedly hugged him tightly, continuously comforting him. "Don't worry, Siren, and remember to come back safe and sound. Father guarantees that they won't lay a finger on any member of this family." At that moment, Vincent truly didn't know if his actions were right or not. Olena couldn't hold back her tears out of worry for her son, but if he wanted to go, the 2 of them couldn't stop him. 1 week later, Timorin sent someone to pick Siren up as promised. After having Vincent sign a commitment, they hurriedly took him away. The carriage door closed and began to move. Siren quickly entered his spiritual world. He could see Vincent and Alina embracing each other, crying bitterly in his subconscious. Siren wanted to reach out to touch them, but the last spark of reason made him withdraw his hand. That's right, this opportunity is a double-edged sword. Although working for the Ocean family is very dangerous, it will also bring Siren many things, and he won't tremble and back down anymore. Speaking of the Ocean family, their main house is located inside Chris City of the Tomia Kingdom, quite far from the Basuka capital. Ocean is a warrior clan that often trains orthodox swordsmen. The previous head of the family was a rank 3 swordsman, and the current head Bishop Ocean is a rank 4 orthodox swordsman. In short, they have the power to influence strong forces within the city. It's unknown how long after, but the carriage arrived in front of the Ocean family mansion. This was Siren's first time stepping into a noble family, moreover a second-rank noble family with great influence in the kingdom. The magnificent grand scene before him truly overwhelmed him. The two people responsible for receiving Siren led him to the administrative room, combined with the butler's resting room, which would also be where he stayed for the next 2 years. Timoran was already waiting there. He didn't give Siren time to rest and immediately took him to the family's grand library to explain the tasks Siren needed to do. Entering the Ocean family library, Siren was even more overwhelmed. He had never seen so many books, and for a book lover like Siren, this was truly a paradise. Because the Ocean family had built a new library, the books here would be moved there, and Siren's task was to organize them. He would receive a list each week, and then based on the titles on it, find and gather the books. Working hours were from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. Outside these hours, Siren was allowed to rest, but not go outside, and he was also not allowed to enter the manor without permission. Timoran was the head butler, so he would be busier, but besides him, there would be other butlers who would teach Siren etiquette. When entering this family, do you have any questions? Timoran asked. Siren was still processing the information the other had just told him. He felt this really was an opportunity worth risking his life for. When I started working, Ciro replied with a question in return, starting from tomorrow, just like that. The next morning, Ciro changed into a brand new butler outfit and carried a list as he headed to the Grand Library. After a night of intense thinking, he finally understood why the huge Ocean family only hired one person to handle the bookshelving. Perhaps it was because they needed a consistent standard for organizing the books. For example, if a book named History of Swordsmanship needed to be sorted, everyone would have a different opinion on whether it should go under professional sword techniques or comprehensive history. And another thing Ciro realized from experiencing these sorting systems was that all knowledge is interconnected. And the core thing that connects them all is history. Knowledge is gradually built along a single line called history. History is the backbone of knowledge. After studying history thoroughly and using it to reinforce other fields, Ciro's reading speed also increased significantly. Out of the 10,000 books here, about 850 are history books, and he plans to read them all within 2 years here to achieve his greatest dream of becoming a time mage. Time passed slowly like that, and Ciro adapted very quickly to his job. That night, while secretly reading in the library, Ciro heard footsteps. Timoran came with a deputy butler. Ciro quickly put away the book in his hands because, after all, reading library books during overtime wasn't allowed. Have you finished organizing everything? Are you working overtime again? Yes, sir. Ciro hurriedly stood up straight and answered seriously. Timoran didn't doubt him at all, just reminded Ciro not to overexert himself, because after all, he still had 2 years in this library. And most importantly, he must take full responsibility for everything he does. If his body got too tired and caused mistakes, he might lose his head without even knowing it. After leaving a new list, Timoran started to leave, but after a few steps, he suddenly turned back straight to Ciro, making him very tense. What's going on? Could it be that he found out I was secretly reading library books during overtime? But luckily, Timoran just came over and fixed the bow on Ciro's collar. In this library, it's not just butlers, but also the family head and young masters who visit. Pay attention to your uniform and make sure you don't bring shame to the Ocean family. Timoran also reminded Ciro to trim his long hair. Then he really left. Ciro breathed a sigh of relief and started thinking about tying his hair up like his father. But actually, there was something more worrying. The knowledge in the books was too difficult. After Timoran and the deputy butler left, Ciro struggled again with that massive amount of information. He wanted to memorize quickly, but if he wanted to access the knowledge of any book anytime, he had to clearly understand every event inside. So he tried to cram more words into his head, but after working hard all day, Ciro soon couldn't resist sleepiness and collapsed onto the table. When he was fast asleep, a hand reached out and took the book he was reading. It was Temeron. No one knows when he came back or if he was just silly. He clicked his tongue and muttered to himself, "You've been holding that book for a whole month. Do you think you can succeed through studying alone? If you read more practical books, I would have forbidden you from coming here outside working hours." But luckily, he was just a foolish guy with determination. 3 months passed, and Ciro had started to get used to working in the Ocean family's grand library. He also learned many other things from the maids. After 3 months of work, Ciro also realized that the nobles didn't really care if 1 or 2 books were missing. That also meant that there probably wasn't any book in the library that was too important. But that didn't mean Ciro would be any safer. So he still held firmly to the same view as when Temurin came to him: he must not make any mistakes. While he was lost in thought, the grand library door suddenly burst open. Then came a voice that pierced the eardrum. Ciro was stunned. "Damn, old man." He jumped, looked up, and the person who rushed in was a tall young man with blue hair. From what Ciro knew, this was the youngest master of the family Rian Ocean. After Ryan, another voice echoed, this time even more threatening. "Ryan, how dare you try to run away? When I catch you, you'll have to run another 100 laps. Rian quickly rushed towards Ciro, then hid under the nearby table. Before escaping, he didn't forget to remind Ciro not to tell the next visitor that he was hiding here. Ryan's large body put a lot of pressure on Ciro, but the person who stormed into the grand library afterward was even bigger. "I know you're hiding here, Ryan. Hey kid, was there a little green-haired kid about the size of a bean who just barged in?" Ciro was speechless. If that green-haired kid was the size of a bean, then his skinny figure must look even smaller to this old man. But the man looked so intimidating that Ciro had to carefully probe his identity first. "Pardon me, may I ask who you are?" "I am a swordsmanship instructor. I am the teacher who has the right to beat that bean-sized kid into a pulp, got it?" 2 words, "got it." It was truly like piercing Ciro's eardrums. He felt that if he didn't answer, this old man might bury him alive. So despite the youngest young master's warnings, Ciro had to honestly admit that he was hiding under the bookshelf next to Ryan's swordsmanship teacher. Immediately, the man grabbed him by the collar with one hand and dragged him out. "Master, this is just a misunderstanding," Ryan frantically explained, but the man gave him no chance. Ryan was thrown hard to the ground by his master, who then grabbed his legs and dragged him away. "Come with me, you brat, who dares to neglect training. You need to be taught a lesson about discipline." Ryan looked extremely miserable. Ciro could clearly read his lips speaking to him. Back then, Ryan said you'd have to pay the price, but Ryan's swordsmanship teacher looked even more powerful than the family head. So Ciro really had no other choice. After that day, Ciro vaguely heard that the youngest young master had been taken up the mountain to train. So in the following days, no one suddenly barged into the library shouting to startle him anymore. In the days after, Ciro continued to finish his work while seizing the chance to read books. He finished the first book in 20 days, but after fully understanding it, he read 82 books within just 4 months. Everything progressed exactly as Ciro had expected. The beginning was quite difficult, but after that, no book contained entirely new content. If he built a foundation with the first 200 books, the remaining 650 would be easier to absorb. When Ciro read books about the history and origins of magic, he began to question if learning about magical origins at this point was the right choice. But since he had already studied the formation of all things, he became even more certain that this decision was correct. Because if a scholar creates a theorem, a mage is similar, but they also have to realize that theory and apply it in practice. Therefore, a mage is like a scholar. However, not all scholars are mages because not everyone can enter the divine sensory state in consciousness. That is the spiritual world. So Ciro was more confident that with his spiritual world, as long as he absorbed a large amount of knowledge from these books, he could become a true mage. It seemed that Ciro's peaceful days would last forever until that evening when Ryan returned furious. "Hey, you bastard! I crossed hell to wait for this day." It was still the same green hair, tall figure, and ear-piercing voice. Ciro silently broke out in a cold sweat. This young master was really persistent. After such a grueling mountain trial, he still remembered the grudge exposed in the library, so angry that his teeth chattered. "Do you know how many troubles I had to go through, you bastard?" Then he began to describe how his master had tortured him, climbing the cliff countless times until his fingers had no strength left. But every time he thought he was about to die, he remembered the grudge in the library with the person who put him in this situation and felt re-energized. Ciro sighed silently. This young master wasn't just about revenge. It seemed his anger had been building up and reached its peak. "Why don't you dare to open your mouth and talk?" I asked for your help and trusted you, but you turned against me and reported me to the master. Just seeing a coward like you makes me want to vomit." Saying that, Ryan grabbed Ciro by the collar. "That's not true. I was just telling the truth. Don't try to justify yourself as being right. You should have said you didn't follow my request back then." Ciro sighed silently. "It seems you can't reason with someone who is angry and overwhelmingly stronger than you. So, young master, what should I do?" Ryan looked surprised when Ciro calmly asked back. Then he burst out laughing and dragged Ciro to the sword training yard even though it was midnight. Siren thought the other intended to attack him with a sword. Until anger subsided, he didn't want to lose the opportunity his parents risked their lives to beg for him. So he decided to lie still and take Ryan's blows. But after eyeing the weapons hanging on the rack, Ryan randomly grabbed a wooden sword and threw it to Siren. He challenged Siren to a one-on-one duel. "I'm not as cowardly as you. The price for underestimating me has already been set. You will become a great swordsman. You will have to endure the wrath of my sword." "What cowardly thing have I done, young master?" Since Ryan kept calling him a coward, Ciro got fired up and retorted, "As a servant of the Ocean family, you should protect Ocean relatives, but you betrayed me to the master just because you're afraid of getting beaten. Isn't that cowardly?" When Ryan said this, Ciro could clearly see his gaze turn more vicious. Siren instinctively gripped the sword tightly, and that was exactly what Ryan wanted. Because of the large skill gap, he allowed Siren to strike the first 3 moves. Siren was extremely tense. Though it was just a wooden sword that couldn't kill him, wood is very hard. If he broke a bone, Siren would be sent home and lose this job. A question kept running through his mind about what he should do now. After a few seconds of thought, Siren gripped the sword tightly and attacked fiercely. But Ryan easily dodged the first strike. The second time Shron struck, Ryan blocked it with his own sword. Unlike Siren's trembling grip, Ryan clearly had a much stronger foundation. His strength was also superior. Sweat drenched Siren's neck. He had only one last chance to attack his opponent, and if he failed this time, Siren would lose utterly. He focused all his spirit and entered his soul world. In the spirit realm, Siren could sense the weakest point on his opponent's sword, just like the times he successfully created a thunderstrike while chopping wood. After identifying the target, Siren immediately launched the attack. Ryan quickly raised his sword to block even mocking Siren's ridiculous stance. But when Siren's sword came down, Ryan could no longer laugh, because his sword instantly shattered into many pieces. He looked absolutely terrified, stunned, as he stared at the broken sword in his hand. Siren's sword also broke, but he had succeeded. Allowing him 3 strikes, Siren used the first to sense strength and calculate timing. The second strike then executed his plan on the third. This was the Thunderstrike that he had been training for 3 years. Rin trembled as he asked, "Where did you learn swordsmanship?" "This isn't swordsmanship, it's just Thunderstrike," Ciro honestly replied. Hearing Rin's confused look, Ciro even patiently explained that his father was a hunter, and he had followed him chopping trees in the mountains since he was little. Since his body was too weak to chop wood the usual way, he came to realize this move to make chopping easier. And Thunderstrike was the name the lumberjacks gave it. Growing more confused, such a powerful move was realized by the opponent while chopping wood, while he had been holding a sword for 15 years and lost to a hunter's son. Moreover, what Ciro called Thunderstrike was actually the Fatal Strike sword technique, a secret skill of the Ocean family that Ryan's older brother Jai had learned at just 12 years old. At that time, Ryan was defeated by Jai using this very technique. Today, he was again defeated by Ciro with that same skill. "I won't accept this." He clenched both fists tightly and couldn't help but shout. Seeing his opponent's expression grow increasingly serious, Ciro relaxed a little but then started to tense up again. "According to the young master, have I made you uncomfortable?" "Shut up, real quat." Then he took out another sword, this time a real genuine sword, and threw it towards Ciro. "Since both our weapons were destroyed, this fight is far from over. If you have mastered the full kill sword technique, then I should treat you accordingly." Ciro's heart wanted to jump out of his chest. Don't tell me the young master has gone crazy and wants to duel with a real sword. Luckily, Ryan isn't that crazy. The duel with a real sword is real, but before that, he'll give Ciro a month to prepare. A month sounds long, but for someone like Ciro with no swordsmanship background, it's practically useless. He held the sword in his hand, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. If this is a real sword, then he could really lose his life. Ciro didn't want to risk his life, so he begged Ryan to reconsider saying that since he had never learned swordsmanship, how could he possibly duel? But Ryan had no intention of retracting his words. "That's why I'm giving you 1 month. If you can master the full kill sword technique, just by chopping wood somehow, you'll manage it. And don't even think about running away because I'm sure I'll surpass you. The sword in his hand wasn't heavy, but Ciro felt it was crushing his heart. After returning to the Great Library and gathering information, Ciro finally understood why the youngest master reacted so tensely. The people of the Ocean family are said to have two hair colors, black and blue. The Ocean clan chief Bischoff has black hair and has 3 sons and 1 daughter. His eldest son has black hair and is currently a level 6 swordsman. The eldest daughter has blue hair, possesses exceptional musical talent, and currently works as a musician in the palace, rather than pursuing the family's swordsmanship path. The second son, Ocean Gaiai, also has black hair and has learned the full kill sword technique. At 52, he's considered a genius. Real Ocean, however, is said to be very different from his siblings. The household staff all agree that he is quite incompetent, despite having his own mentor. Ciro's mood was deeply crushed. He began to regret not letting Rin use the wooden sword to tire him out back then, and instead resisted leading to this mess now. Rin's pride was seriously wounded, and it seems he's determined to win a match against Ciro to lift that psychological burden. Ciro even cried from the stress. If he died in the upcoming fight with Rayon, his parents surely wouldn't be able to live in peace either. Thinking of his parents, Ciro didn't allow himself to lose spirit any longer. Think about it, you're going to be a mage after all, Ciro thought to himself. Then he started looking for some books in the library. When he was living on the mountain, Ciro was already very confident in his physical strength. So he felt that if he learned a few defensive skills, he would definitely survive, and thus Ciro began studying everything within his ability. Meanwhile, Ryan began training like crazy. His sudden enthusiasm surprised his swordsmanship master greatly. Even the boy who usually avoided training was now asking his master for more intense training methods. The swordsmanship teacher wasn't stupid. He quickly realized something was wrong with Ryan, but Ryan just said nothing was wrong. Seeing Ryan so determined, the teacher didn't press further. Instead, he gave him a much harsher devilish training regimen. While Ryan was sweating buckets on the training ground, Ciro was carefully studying the force map. It's considered a simple diagram of the human body. If mages have their spirit realms, swordsmen have force maps to help them visualize their bodies. The force map can push their limits to the extreme. The one who masters the force map can perfectly use and control every cell in their body. This is the most important factor to become a swordsman. This aspect is completely opposite to the spiritual realm that Ciro opened, but it also made him feel interested. Should I try it? Ciro thought silently, and he decided to do it. Ciro folded the book in his hands, closed his eyes, and began to feel himself. This is the first step in opening the force map, and it's quite simple because it's similar to entering the spiritual realm. When opening the spiritual realm, one must erase oneself, but when opening the force map, they need to delve deeply into their own existence. In fact, Ciro didn't want to put all his effort into the force map because it is the opposite of the spiritual realm. So he shifted his focus to learning some basic sword skills based on the spiritual realm he already had. Ciro carried a pile of swordsmanship books out to the training ground. Then he started with the most basic moves, the 8 directions of slashing. Meanwhile, Rin was still pushing himself to train, to the point where even the swordmaster was scared. He had never seen his student so agitated, even though he had been teaching him since he was a child. Rin's feelings were very complicated. Actually, Ciron was just the last straw. The core issue was that Rin was always being compared to his older siblings, and despite training for 15 years, he still hadn't opened the sword path, making him the failure of the Ocean family. The sword master, training him, though seemingly strict, was actually very caring. Today, seeing such a terrifying change in his student, he truly shed tears. That's enough for today. Let's stop here. The sword in Rin's hand was taken by the master. Only then did he feel all the muscles in his body aching. Rin obediently put down his sword, then sat down and looked at his master. "What are you thinking?" his sword master asked while wiping sweat from his face. "My hands hurt so much they're about to give out." "Rin, you know, I never knew you could push yourself this hard, but I think you've done very well. Have you ever thought about what you're best at?" he suddenly asked. "I don't know, I just know what I'm bad at." "Yes, that's exactly why you're not a genius," Rin snapped, thinking the master was mocking him. But when he looked at the master's serious face filled with heavy thoughts, he realized otherwise. He said all geniuses know what they are best at and only put in effort when they are 100% confident they will do well. But geniuses also have a fear, the hard work needed to achieve the impossible, a burning will to challenge the unattainable. That will and determination are the nemesis of geniuses. Thank you, Master. Rin smiled faintly. Of all the encouragement I've ever heard, I like these words the most. His swordmaster wasn't just speaking casually. These words truly ignited Rin's fighting spirit, making him decide that if talent wasn't something he was born with, he would grit his teeth and forge it through hard, relentless training. Rin wanted to use his determination to turn the impossible into possible. He wanted to win, and coincidentally, that was also Ciro's thought as he struggled with basic sword techniques right now. Ciro was also very serious with his first sword strokes. Swordsmanship is the process of learning moves to take another's life, so its downside is a high-stakes psychological battle of life and death. Without a partner, Ciro could only firmly grip the sword Rin threw to him and imagine an invisible enemy in front of him who could attack from many directions. In fact, when attacking with a sword, there are 8 major directions, and Ciro, with his extraordinary effort, trained himself in those 8 slashes and how to counter those 8 directions. He kept practicing like that, then realized that the path of swordsmanship was as infinite as magic. And all that Ciro had learned was just like a grain of sand in the desert. "Parents, I'm sorry, but maybe this time I can't come home anymore," Ciro said to himself with a tone full of sorrow. But since joining the Ocean family, he had never regretted it. Although the path he walked faced death, he had also seen a wonderful world. A month passed quickly, and Ciro arrived at the training ground, as promised, to enter the life and death duel with Rin. In just a short month, you can clearly feel that the opponent's aura has completely changed, and that's exactly what Rin sensed from Ciron, because just a month ago he appeared in a very chaotic state in both posture and balance, yet now Ciron is completely stable. Even though it's his first time holding a real sword, he remains very calm. This made Rin unable not to associate Ciron with his older brother Gi, which only made Rin want to win even more. Rin was the one who rushed at Ciron with great tension, because although this young master was called incompetent by the servants, his swordsmanship was already on a different level compared to Rin. But luckily, due to nonstop effort over the past month, Ciron could still sense the direction of the sword. Ciron's calmness and way of observing the sword's direction made Rin's blood boil. Is he not afraid of this blade? He wondered deeply. In reality, Ciron isn't reckless or fearless of death, but he has completely controlled his emotions. On this side, Rin continued to attack. This time, the sword came from the right hand. Ciron managed to block again, but the first 2 times were easy. After those strikes, Rin's speed increased more and more, starting to surpass Ciron's ability to perceive the sword's direction. Finally, the tip of Rin's sword successfully left a shallow cut on Ciron's chest. When fresh blood flowed, he knew he was about to lose. Ciron quickly changed his strategy, retreating with all his strength. Alongside the pain coming from his chest was an inexplicable confusion. Rin looked into his eyes and seemed to understand that confusion, which made him even more smug. What he just used was the ocean sword technique to wield the great sword. Each slash was Rin's effort to break bones, so its power was completely different from normal sword techniques. After injuring Ciron, Rin became even more fired up. In Rin's eyes now, there was only one goal: to crush Ciron with his strength. They rushed into the second round, but this time Ciron again felt confused. If Rin had slashed upward after hitting his chest, Ciron would have been cut on the side already. But Rin's following attacks didn't seem like finishing moves. This also meant Rin's understanding of swordsmanship was lower than Ciron thought. Rin might be skilled at swinging the sword, but didn't fully understand how to use the moves effectively. This was the gap Ciron could exploit to turn things around. He immediately changed his battle plan by putting all his strength into attacking. Ciron had learned the basics of sword swinging, so his strikes were relatively decisive. Rin was truly shocked again. Why did he suddenly attack? Wasn't he already exhausted? He wondered anxiously to himself. Rin grew even more confused when clearly the moves Ciron used were quite simple, yet he couldn't block them. Rin, who was in the dominant position attacking wildly, suddenly fell into a passive stance, seeing the opponent's stamina gradually decline after clumsy blocks. Ciron grew more hopeful about preserving his little life. He just needed to persist in maintaining his stamina and continue this attack rhythm to win. On this side, Rin's mind was shaking violently. Ciron's dominance made the ghost of the past appear again in his mind. Rin remembered his older brother Gi, who was praised by their father as a genius, and was the one who defeated him with a deadly sword technique. Remembering the proud, satisfied smile on his brother's face when he defeated him, Rin's anger exploded again. And he poured that anger onto Ciron. Rin's sudden loss of composure made Ciron think he had given up. But right then, a new problem arose. Rin really wasn't calm, but the sudden outburst of anger made his sword-swinging speed increase significantly. It was so fast that Siron couldn't read all the sword directions. And in the final strike, Siron felt as if death itself had come to tap him on the shoulder. But with such a strong leading man aura, of course this old grandpa wouldn't go down so easily. Neither of them landed a hit because Rin's sword was knocked away by Siron's sword. He stood there in a daze in a way that was hard to understand while Siro was so exhausted he could barely breathe. But I could clearly see that in that last strike, Siro read the direction of my sword and changed his grip in the blink of an eye. Each of Siro's strikes was aimed upward, directly clashing with Ryan's downward sword, using all the remaining strength. He won by flipping my sword away. Siro gasped for air. He had won, but still couldn't believe he actually did. And even though he truly won, Siro still felt awkward because despite the duel, the opponent was still a noble. And he had once again trampled on that noble's lofty pride. I don't know what Rin will do next. Siro was very tense. He couldn't imagine how furious Rin might get next. But this time Rin wasn't angry. He just bowed his head and said, "I lost." While Siro was still stunned, Rin scratched his head and repeated, "I lost," several more times with a flustered look. "I lost and you won. Since I lost, even if you decide to take my life, I have nothing to say." Siro was a bit surprised. He didn't think Rin could accept defeat so easily, and even let him decide his own fate. He's a noble, so how could you keep your life if you touched a single hair on his head? What nonsense are you talking about, young master? Siro nearly shouted at Rin. "We fought with our lives on the line and I admitted I lost. So you have the right to take my life, don't you?" Rin foolishly replied, "You want to bet your life on this, but I just want to live." Siro yelled, "So I knew from the start this fight was ridiculous. From the start, why blame and try to trap me when you're the one who ran from your master just to avoid training?" Anger surged in Siro's mind. He wasn't afraid anymore and bluntly criticized the young master. Facing Ryan, who wouldn't back down, Siro immediately fired back with his usual sharp tongue. "Wait, you bastard, who needs to blame who here, huh? It's all because you're cowardly. Even if this is our first meeting and under these circumstances, you should respect me, right?" "Respect my ass," Siro cut him off. "Have you ever thought about how much you've put me in an awkward position? I'm stuck between the son of the family head and your sword master. If you were really worthy of respect, you wouldn't have pushed someone insignificant like me into such a situation." Siro grew more passionate, unleashing all his frustrations to lash out at Ryan. Honestly, this young master is a genuine brat. He wanted to challenge Siro out of pride for his family not to corner him to death. And Siro really thought this time he might have to go sell salt for a living. After scolding the young master, he was so tired he sat down on the ground opposite him. Ryan was scolded by the household servants and couldn't even wipe his face in time, but strangely he wasn't angry. In the moment Siro vented, Ryan felt the cold, calm warrior he just faced had disappeared. Instead, there was a teenager about his own age. And the most important thing was, although Ryan thought Siro was definitely a genius, he didn't mock Ryan like Jai did. Instead, Siro gave his all to face Ryan, both to protect himself and to respect his opponent. Because of this, Ryan saw the young man before him in a different light. "What's your name?" he suddenly asked. "Aryan Siren." Siro didn't know what the other meant, but still answered stiffly. "I am Ocean Dream said firmly. Siro once again felt confused. Everyone knows this blue-haired youth is Ocean Dream. And the confusion peaked when Dream suddenly reached out to pull Siro up, offering a proposal. "Let's be friends." The duel between the two had ended like that. Siro went back to his work. "In the blink of an eye, a year has passed since you first stepped into the Ocean Mansion, and Siren has classified a total of 7/28 out of 10 453 books. 53. This progress far exceeds expectations. Even someone as strict as Timurin couldn't help but leave a compliment because of the number of books sorted. Siren's sorting has slowed down considerably, so your work efficiency has improved even more. Your goal to read all 850 history books now only has 200 left. Every day you read up to 3 books, and soon Siren will complete the foundational knowledge he's always dreamed of. Not only that, thanks to Ryan, you've also experienced swordsmanship and understood the nature of fear. Because of that, it seems Siren's spiritual endurance has also increased. Although the start was quite slow, you know that as long as you don't give up, you will eventually reach your goal. And most importantly, Siren has found his first good friend in life, who was also the one who yelled at him the first time they met. After that duel, Ryan almost always planted himself in the Great Library to talk with Siren. And you realize he's quite affectionate and has very endearing sides completely opposite to his imposing appearance. Although sometimes Rin still acts in ways that give Siron a headache, like messing up the pile of books he just sorted overall, this friend is quite valuable. It's just that after getting close, Rin started to get lazy with his training. For example, today, after finishing basic training, he told his master he wanted to go to the library to study and ended up staying there. Siren also knows that this seemingly lazy person is actually a quietly burning fire that could flare up at any moment. Ryan will get stronger as long as he has the chance, so there's no need to push him too hard in training. And so Siren agreed to let Ryan stay in the library and read with him. But only 10 minutes later, Ryan was already tired of the words in the books. Isn't Siren the one who said he wanted to become a mage? Do you really have to read that many books? 800 volumes? You're crazy, Rin grumbled. Of course, actually, I'm still behind. Before coming here, I didn't have any chance to study, but now after reading more than 600 history books, I almost know everything. He just wasn't interested in reading books, so he focused on observing Siren. And every time he watched you work, he was amazed once again. Siren's reading speed was unbelievably fast to the point that Ryan felt Siren could be pulled into the book at any moment. Out of boredom, Ryan read a few words and started a conversation with Siren. Whenever they were near each other, it was like being in the Free Fire waiting hall. Because of that, Siren couldn't concentrate on reading. The two began debating over the book in Ryan's hands. It was about the most common debate on the continent. If a swordsman and a mage fought, who would win? Of course, the swordsman would win. A voice rang out from behind the bookshelf. Upon hearing this, Siren immediately stood up because the owner of the voice was Ocean Chai, the second young master of the Ocean family, and the older brother that Ryan hated bitterly. Siren was extremely tense, fearing that the recent conversation between the two had been overheard by Jai. A servant who dares to speak disrespectfully to nobles won't be let off easily. Jai's gaze now seemed like it wanted to pierce right through him. Seeing Siren awkward, Ryan had to speak up to save him. Why do you say it like you already know the result? Are you sure you're not on the swordsman's side just because you're a swordsman yourself? Oh, I didn't think you'd pay that much attention to this. Just look at the status of swordsmen and mages on the continent, and you'll see right away. Rin laughed heartily. We're talking about combat. What does their status have to do with it? Do people choose positions on the battlefield based on military rank? You're not seriously going to say something that meaningless, are you? Rin showed clear defiance, but Jai didn't bother to care. Instead, he turned back to Siren, standing nearby. Oh, you standing over there, what do you think? It was just a normal question, but Siren felt an invisible pressure from the other party. You can't guess what Jai's purpose is, and if you don't come up with the answer he wants, whether you'll still be safe or not. Even so, Siro couldn't ignore the opponent's question. He could only cautiously state his opinion. You think that if the swordsman and the mage have equivalent skill levels, the swordsman would hardly win once the mage enters their spiritual realm. But if the swordsman uses his excellent physical strength to fight before the mage can enter the spiritual realm, he can definitely win. No, you're wrong, Gi cut off Siro's words. Somehow he had already stepped right in front of you. Gi is taller than Siro, so his aura was overwhelmingly dominant. You're wrong, the mage will lose. When he said this, a smug smile appeared on Gi's face. That familiar, superior attitude was extremely irritating to Ryan. This trait of Gi's has been there since he was a child. Whenever he felt annoyed with someone, he enjoyed trampling on what they valued. Before it was Ryan, now Gi wants to press down on Siro. You seem to like history, huh? I'm sure you've heard of the 5 divine armors, right? Those sacred relics have the power to break the spiritual world of mages. I'm talking about magic resistance. Siro was stunned by Gi's words. The innate ability of a mage is their spiritual realm or spiritual world. Fighting a mage within their spiritual realm is like fighting a pack of sharks in the deep sea. However, there is something that can stir the waters and confuse the sharks, which is why the magic resistance I just mentioned was created. If the spiritual world can't be affected, then magic can't either. Once someone possesses a sacred relic with this attribute, the mage can do nothing to them. But after all, this is still just a hypothesis. In the past, magic resistance was a precious power created from the mana flow within a dragon's heart. That alone made its value very high. Moreover, due to frequency oscillations, no matter how much wealth is invested, its effectiveness cannot be increased. Even a master mage like Yakra could only use up to 65% of the power of the 5 divine armors. So the price to obtain a sacred relic is even higher. Of course, nowadays it also has historical value. Thus, the value of magic resistance is worth a kingdom's annual budget. But the biggest issue here is that the creators of magic resistance are also mages. They created things that work against themselves because the demand was very high. So the swords are easy to wield. Those mages are lining up to be employed. Being a mage is just a profession for those pathetic guys trying to sell their own weaknesses for money. Gi's voice was dripping with disdain. Ryan was extremely upset because he knew Ciro dreamed of becoming a mage, yet Gi openly insulted that profession like that. The thing is, you should have been angry at Siren, but he doesn't seem to show much emotional change. That's just the nature of a mage. Suddenly he smiled brightly and said, Siren's attitude surprised both Ocean brothers, especially Gi. What did you say? He even thought he misheard. Ben asked again. You're right, magic resistance is indeed created by mages. It's used to limit the power of magic in high magic zones, and is also effectively used to assist in training magic students. Siren's knowledge is not inferior to Gi's at all. You know, magic resistance is really used against mages, but its existence is like an intellectual achievement, serving good purposes, and that's why Siren maintains his view that Gi's belief that swordsmen are nobler than mages is just a biased opinion. Absolutely wrong. Gi, as the Ocean family's second young master, has always been used to trampling others. Today, right in his own house, he was pressed by Siren with a calm tone, but Siren's attitude remained proper, leaving Gi completely unable to find fault. The theory you talk about and reality are two very different things. No matter what the truth is, mages will never win against swordsmen, Gi said, and then stormed off angrily. Only then could Siren breathe a sigh of relief. When young Master Gi appeared with that scary face, I really thought I was done for. Rin was also very happy because he finally found a troublemaker to throw back at Gi. After that incident, Gi no longer went to the library to cause trouble. Because of that, Siron had more time to focus on his work. 6 months after winter arrived, he had completed the task of sorting more than 10,000 books. The time to complete the work was even 6 months faster than expected. Timuran seemed very relieved that the books neglected for the past 25 years were finally properly organized. Siren had completed the task so he could return home, but an Ocean family steward seemed reluctant to lose such a useful person like him. He wanted to force an extension of Siren's contract with some ridiculous reasons, but Timuran disagreed with this. Meanwhile, Saviron at the Grand Library finished reading the last book he needed completing, 1.5 years of the Ocean noble family's book caretaker role. Ryan, who had been practicing swordsmanship, hurried over after hearing Siren Ron had finished his book sorting task. He was worried Siren would just go home like that. Seeing Siren had read more than 800 books, Rian looked even more excited than Siren himself. To celebrate this, Siren wanted to do something special and suggested Ryan take him to tour his family mansion. Although they lived on the same estate most of the time, they only met at the library. Moreover, it was Ryan who took the initiative to invite him, since Siren, as a servant, never had the chance to see the true home of a noble. Coincidentally, the entire Ocean family was out today and would return after the afternoon, so Ryan and Ben gladly agreed to his request. Siren already thought the Grand Library was huge, but when he stepped inside the mansion, he was truly overwhelmed. Just one room here must be as big as his entire house. Ryan really is the young master of a wealthy family. Yet he was not arrogant at all. On the contrary, he seemed a bit naive. Ryan took Siren to visit his bedroom, the smallest room at the end of the hallway. Siren had prepared himself to be dazzled by luxury upon entering, but in fact, Ryan's bedroom was much simpler than the other rooms, and importantly, it was filled with training and sword forging equipment. The messy bed looked like a resting spot after practice. Siren couldn't believe his eyes. The young Master Rian lived in such a simple place. You really can't judge a book by its cover. After the tour, Siren and Rian invited each other to play poker, but Rian kept complaining about losing. You're cheating, using your domain, right? What? Who do you think I am to play such dirty tricks, huh? Speaking of which, Siron immediately revealed to Rian how he guessed the cards correctly. That's the way he won. Siron has a habit of placing the aces on the outside, and the way he bets when holding a pair is also quite easy to recognize. Being called out so precisely, I just really want to throw a tantrum here. Observation skills will be effective right after you are not focused on any particular thought, so when observing your opponent, you should watch all their actions. Then you can guess what they're thinking. Siren sincerely gave Ron some pointers, hoping he would soon break through his personal limits, but unexpectedly, before he finished 2 sentences, Rian had already nodded off. Siren was about to return to his room when he heard a melodious voice. No matter the melody, tone, or rhythm, the player controlled the music perfectly. Siren subconsciously followed the music. He knew there was only one person in the world who could reach that level, and that was Ryan's sister Vina Ocean. See this, Tsunoda. After the music stopped, Vina suddenly unasked, making Siren, who was hiding behind the long door, startle. Seeing that as she had noticed him, he stopped hiding and walked straight up to her. I think it's very beautiful. Siren's mood tensed again, maybe because he was in front of a noble's daughter, or perhaps because Vina was too beautiful. Hello, this is the first time I've met you. Are you new here? Vina continued to ask. Yes, miss. I am in charge of sorting books in the library, and it's been a year now. If that's the case, have you ever played the piano before? Siren really wanted to refuse because, apart from Ryan, he didn't want to get involved with any other recruits. Moreover, Rena is an expert in using force maps during performances, so he wanted to learn from her. This person was just Ryan, who once said his sister had the worst personality in this mansion, so Siren seemed very cautious, responding. Not yet, miss. Then let me teach you. Come here. Rena proactively scooted aside, leaving space on the seat next to her for Siren, but he really didn't dare to sit there. What's wrong with these ocean siblings? Siren thought to himself that he couldn't be careless. She is an expert in using force maps when performing. He awkwardly replied, I'm fine saying it, but feeling turbulent inside. Ryan also said that the hardest person to please in this mansion is her sister. She looked at him and smiled gently. Then I will teach you. Come sit here. She placed one hand on the piano keys and patted the empty seat next to her with the other. He was stunned by her invitation. Sweat began to form on his forehead. He remained tense, his mind screaming, What? Sit there. Rena, perceptive, saw his tense expression and calmly reassured him. It's okay, I gave permission so no one will blame you. He bit his lip, hesitating internally, struggling, she insisted, but he had no right to refuse. Reluctantly, he sat down, feeling both tense and excited, his heart racing. Besides, when will I get another chance to sit before a piano? He seriously listened as she explained music theory, passionately guiding him through each note. Now there are notes, do, re, mi, and the musical symbols. She asked him to try pressing all three keys at once, and he quickly followed her instructions, gently pressing the three keys simultaneously. A sound rang out, making him a bit embarrassed. The clear, soaring tone moved his heart, and he exclaimed, What a beautiful resonance. She turned to him and said, surprised, Good start. His feelings were restless and hard to describe, embarrassed, his eyes betraying his awkwardness. Sorry if I'm asking too much, but may I try playing? She was very surprised by his request, but didn't hesitate to agree immediately. Sure. Siren bowed his head, realizing his behavior was somewhat rude. His request seemed a bit much, and he felt it wasn't very proper. It probably won't be very good. Vina smiled gently and said to him, That's how everyone starts. However, deep inside, she couldn't help but wonder, does he know more about music theory than what I just taught? Siren placed both hands on the piano keys, lightly touching the keys, beginning to move his fingers gently and flexibly, pressing the black and white keys. Clear and enchanting sounds from the notes rang out one after another. Rena was so amazed she covered her mouth, her eyes staring at his hands, admiring. Unbelievable. He played all the wrong notes but didn't hesitate at all to press the keys. Should I stop him? Vina was sweating as she watched Siren play the piano, a thought forming in her mind. She focused on the music he played, her face no longer stiff. It was strange he played completely wrong, yet despite the imperfect and somewhat chaotic sounds, she still enjoyed it. Then suddenly Jenna noticed something. Her eyes widened in amazement as she stared at the skillfully moving hands on the keys. She was stunned, but like Siren, completely melted into the melody of the music. At that moment, she realized that it was as if he could perfectly imitate the feeling of the piece she had just played. The harmony in every note truly amazed and astonished her. His eyes suddenly glowed with a jade-green light. Siren seemed to fall into a matrix of musical notes, and he and she sat at the center of the dim light, creating a magical and captivating space. Under his skillful hands, melodies and sounds flowed one after another. His hands glided gracefully over the keys, the notes seeming to dance around. With each melody, Siren's fingers pressed the keys, sparkling and standing out and enhancing his fluidity and finesse. At this moment, Rena's eyes narrowed seriously, as if he was on the right track. She pondered, starting to hear it more accurately. His hands kept moving up and down like a true artist. She sat focused, listening and savoring each melody he painted. Vina was stunned, looking at the man in front of her. What was happening before her eyes was hard to believe. An indescribable feeling rose inside her, so this couldn't be called a performance, but he seemed to perceive and grasp the purest essence. Rihanna observed every gesture and action of Siren. A few questions arose in her mind. How is this kid a butler? Especially since he looks like nobility. Seeing her thoughtful expression, he also realized, sorry I hadn't finished speaking before Ryan's scream cut in. Stop making so much noise, you annoying gremlin. His shout tore through the gentle atmosphere, making Siren uneasy. Sweat started dripping from his forehead as Ryan's annoyed and slightly angry gaze appeared. His mouth kept yelling loudly, just rest once we're home. Why are you acting crazy like this? Looking into the room except for her, the person next to him was also irritating. He looked at him with surprise and confusion. Hey, you're here too. Siren met Ryan in this awkward situation, his expression a bit shy and embarrassed. He awkwardly replied, yes, that's right. Venus sitting beside them, Bish, also looked puzzled, not fully understanding the situation, astonished, do you two know each other? While Ryan stood still, Siren looked from him to her, shyly stammering, no, unsure how to answer, sweating nervously, worried their friendship might be exposed. I feel like I'm committing some crime. Behind Ryan, scratching casually, he said calmly, oh, Saroon, huh? You're finally fully awake now. His eyes lit up as he introduced Saroon to Jaina. He's my friend. Like sprayed with glue and shock, she dropped to the floor, her eyes horrified, looking at him. What did you just say, Ryan? You probably know in your heart, maybe you're afraid that revealing the friendship won't be good. He smiled brightly, hands on his hips facing Jaina, and Ryan reassured him. Don't worry, the gremlin witch has a nasty personality, but she doesn't care about stuff like that. Siren's eyes widened in disbelief. His inner feelings stirred, but how could that be? Why wouldn't she care? Just when he was unsure how to face her, spoke first. So, your name is Saroon. She squatted beside him, gentle and caring, placing a light hand on his shoulder. Don't worry if you two are just friends. That's good. The kid is a bit annoying, but he takes his words seriously. Her reaction was beyond his imagination, making him a bit anxious. So Jaina doesn't care if he and the other guy are friends. What she's more curious about is his thoughts. She was curious. So what were you thinking while playing? I really want to know. He was scared by her question. Many question marks flashed in his mind, unsure what she meant, and her question shocked him. What do you mean Ciro was playing? I thought you were going crazy in here. Witnessing this scene, the logic of 16 years collapsed. The wall of his beliefs shattered in an instant. Deep inside, he kept wondering, does he not care that his sister is friends with a commoner? Saroon turned to look at him and then at Ryan. Why are you lying? Your sister is a beautiful and kind young lady. Hearing these words from him, she couldn't help but be pleased. Contrary to her expression, Ryan turned pale, looking serious with a hint of fear. Whatever you do, don't get tricked by her. She's a witch. Who knows when she'll latch on to you and swallow you whole? Hearing this, he was also surprised. She leaned close to him, covering her mouth with her hand, and smiled apologetically. Sorry, little brother, I'm a bit childish. I'm glad she has you as a friend, so please watch over her. He looked at Gina's smiling face and replied, No problem at all. Actually, I'm the one who owes you. Her enthusiasm embarrassed him, and Ryan praised Ciro wholeheartedly. Oh man, you're really adorable. Seeing this, Ryan gave a mischievous, cute smile. Then why don't you keep him here and have him join our family too? Ryan was surprised by this idea, and she smiled with such close enthusiasm. Aren't you afraid he'll steal your sister away? Ryan laughed heartily. What are you talking about? You're the one I worry about. It was Saroon. After finishing, she grabbed his collar tightly, and the two started fighting. She showed no mercy and didn't care that he was her brother as she hit him fiercely. Thought I wouldn't say anything, and you think you're so great. The two wrestled on the floor, and Ryan couldn't take it anymore and shouted, Ow, ow, that hurts. Saroon watched the two siblings fight. The chaotic thoughts in his head made him feel confused. Just when he thought he understood more about the nobles, things became even more baffling. After getting beaten up, Ryan sulked, unsatisfied, and yelled at her. Why did you come home, sister? You just got off recently. She casually brushed her hands off. Don't you know Jai is preparing for the examination? I came to pick him up. Tomorrow we'll leave, and he went to visit another friend. He'll come back later. Rian's mouth dropped open in surprise. What are you, crazy? He lowered his head, voice softening. Is it really that far? He saw his sadness and kept thinking about what she said. The certification exam is a standard and requirement for mages and swordsmen to be recognized not only in the kingdom, but across the continent. Every year, more than 1,000 people participate, but fewer than 30 succeed each time. There is also an uncertified degree. If you graduate from an academy certified by the kingdom like the Alpheus Magic Academy, you can become a level 10 uncertified mage. After receiving achievement points through organizations and guilds, you can be promoted. Hundreds, thousands of people flock here. The line stretches so far it's unclear where it ends. But where there's wealth and fame, people naturally gather. Even with an uncertified degree, people still long for the certification exam, the legendary test that Jai is preparing to take at 18. Ryan marveled in admiration. Geniuses really are different, especially with the full backing of their clans. He sighed deeply, his mood dropping. Vina approached, rubbing his head to comfort him. You'll be fine. I'm going to prepare a seafood dinner from the royal palace, so I have to handle it myself. She turned to him and gave a bright smile, happy to see him. See you next time, Ciro. He looked at her in confusion. Yes, have a good day, Your Highness. He wondered silently if he'd have the chance to see her again, recalling the moment she taught him to play the piano. It felt wonderful then. He didn't know if he could see her again, because he would leave the mansion tomorrow. Rihanna went outside, leaving Ciro and Ryan alone. He turned and hesitated before speaking. Rian, your sister looked at me, right? He stared into the distance with determined eyes and asked if his lord had a girlfriend yet. His question froze Ryan momentarily in surprise. Seeing his expression, Ciro knew he'd slipped up and hurriedly embarrassed himself. It's nothing. Rihanna laughed uncontrollably, her eyes sparkling with amusement. He quickly reacted to his tone. I'm just curious, forget that question. Also, let me finish what I was saying. Shouting loudly, Jenna, sis! Ciro sensed something was about to happen, so he called out. Nothing's wrong, I said. But Yen clenched her teeth with a worried look, watching Ryan, who was about to run to the door. He quickly chased after him. A feeling of urgency filled his heart. He blamed himself for letting slip something because he felt sad while Ryan ran as fast as he could outside, not forgetting to shout loudly, Sis, Ciro wants to ask you something. Rihanna stood on the upper floor holding onto the railing, then bent down and shouted loudly, If you have a boyfriend. Rihanna was leading the female servants to prepare the meal from the royal palace. His shout echoed throughout the hall. Rihanna's words rang out once again. Do you have a lover yet? That sentence shocked everyone, and they all turned to look at him. Siron from behind covered Ryan's mouth tightly and dragged him back, making him startled and utter unclear sounds. Upstairs, he kept holding and covering Ryan's mouth. The muffled sounds confused everyone downstairs, whispering and wondering, what's going on? A lover. Her heart kept pounding. When the female servant glanced at her, she just forced a smile to hide her embarrassment and shyness. She laughed out loud and told them, They're just teasing each other, don't pay attention. Rihanna and the servants continued walking while she said, Now let's finish separating the poison, then we need to steam it. They all replied in unison, Yes, miss. Behind a nearby wall, the head butler had been standing there for a long time. All the recent events had caught his attention. He called someone behind him. Hey, Haynes, does the young master have a visitor today? The man bowed. No schedule, sir. Young master has nothing planned, sir. Upstairs, Ryan was about to say more, but Siren said he saw Ryan about to cause trouble, then pulled his hand back. The head butler coldly said to the other man, I've heard that voice before, now I remember. He turned his face eyes sharp as a knife and ordered his subordinate, Tell Timurin to come to my office immediately. Hurry up, he barked. The sky was clear, the forest covered by tall trees, and Ryan's breathing and training sounds echoed in the air. A shout rang out, Stop! Take a 10-minute break! You're out of breath! Holding a training stick in his left hand, his right hand kept wiping sweat. Ket looked at him, then stroked his beard, thinking about him becoming more enthusiastic. It must have been about a year. Watching him train passionately, he recalled how discouraged he was before. He glanced at him, then fell into deep thought. But surely once Guy comes to the royal palace, the boy will change. The key is to seize the right moment. Beads of sweat rolled down Ryan's face. Suddenly a sharp call, Young master! He startled and glanced toward the voice. A man wearing a hat, looking hurried and urgent, ran over. His voice rang from afar. Young master Lady Gina requests you return to the mansion immediately. He was about to drink from his water bottle, but was irritated by the man's words. If it's praise for my brother, I'm not interested. Tell her to do whatever she wants. The servant firmly denied, No, sir. Sir Miss said young master Siren is in danger. He might die. Hearing this, Ryan immediately spat out the water in his mouth. Ring grabbed the water bottle, stood up, and looked at the servant with a worried and anxious expression. I thought he was coming home today. The servant was panting heavily, kneeling down from running too fast. The head butler had reported to the family head. I'm not sure, but the lady said it's related to you. Rian hurriedly grabbed a jacket and threw it on roughly. Anxious, he turned back and told Ket, Master, I have to go meet my father. Seeing his demeanor, the old man knew something was wrong. He insisted, What's going on? You seem a bit upset. A butler named Siron is my friend, and somehow my father found out. There's not much time. He seemed like he was sitting on hot coals, saying, I'm sure father will forgive him if I convince him. I'll train afterwards. As soon as he finished, the old man spoke to stop him. You can't. He stopped, mid-move, stood straight, and looked at the old man, refusing to believe his ears, asking, What? The old man took a sword and stood in front of Ryan. He exclaimed, Master, the magnificent mansion lay before the mountain, vast and expansive. Inside the main hall of the mansion, Siren was kneeling there. Male and female servants stood in 2 lines on both sides. Seated in the center chair was the head of the Big Chop family. On either side were Miss Gina and young Master Jai, with the head butler standing behind them. He knelt on the ground, feeling like an ant on a hot pan. The authoritative voice of the man rang out with full power. Siren Aryan Bitjob radiated a noble aristocratic aura. He held a report in his hand and looked at him angrily. You will be executed. The entire main hall was shaken, everyone whispering nonstop about how this could happen. The female servants couldn't help but feel worried and scared. One female servant whispered closely to another, wondering how a commoner dared to act like this toward a noble. The whispers grew louder and more frequent. Another person thought he didn't know right from wrong. He should know these rules clearly. Every word of judgment and evaluation was heard by Tamura. He just glanced at the female servants without saying a word. 3 people sat on the long sofa, Bchop holding a document focused entirely on it. Jay sat beside him, a bit arrogant and indifferent. Only Gina was anxious, feeling like she was sitting on hot coals, wanting to say many things to her father, but couldn't hold back any longer. Vena spoke up. Father, don't rush. I have something to say. He flipped through the document in his hand and asked back, What else do you want to say? The stack of documents in his hand was carefully examined. The documents provided by the head steward showed rows of servants lined up, all filled with fear. Mr. Bchop used a stack of documents to accuse him, containing testimonies from many servants, affirming that this kid had acted very recklessly in front of Ryan. He turned to Jenna and questioned her. You've read the contract details, so you shouldn't have any objections. Anything else to say? Ciro lowered his head hesitantly, but then said, I want to ask something. He looked up at him with wary eyes. If I am friends with the young master, what will happen to the young master? All the servants were terrified, thinking he was finished this time. Didn't he even understand his current situation? He should be begging for mercy. He angrily said, You still dare to ask me that? Vina looked at her father, then at him. In such a critical situation, he still dared to ask about Rian. She silently wondered if he cared for Ryan. Even in this situation, he was furious and didn't hold back his insults. Commoners are truly foolish. Do you think nobles would tolerate messing around with someone like you? Ciro lowered his head, sighed, then smiled. He looked straight at him and firmly admitted, Yes, Rin and I are friends. In front of everyone, he confessed again, We've been friends for a year, and I declare we will always be friends. The servants were terrified hearing this from his own mouth and whispered fearfully, This guy. His eyes flashed with a deadly glint, and the servants were curious. Why aren't you afraid? He warned him in a contemptuous tone. That's right, it seems you underestimate Ocean Bchop. Losing his temper, he shouted, Head steward, deal with him quickly. Don't let news of this leak out. He handed the documents to the head steward, who respectfully bowed and took them. 2 soldiers stepped forward, each grabbing one arm to take him out for punishment. Vina shouted to stop them. Father, wait, please listen to me. She bowed her face, betraying her worry and fear for her father, who was losing control. Seeing her try to stop him, he directed his fury at her. He already confessed, and I've made my decision. As the head of the family, once I decide, I don't retract. The servants were like sitting on pins and needles, all worried for their fragile lives. The blond man felt it was unfair and turned to the head steward. Head steward, isn't this a bit too much? The fat man nearby also refused to accept it and spoke up to defend himself. There's no reason for all of us to die because of one person. The blond man grimaced in fear and looked at him, complaining, This family is our lifeline. To protect it, we must eliminate any conflicts, no matter how small. As Sero was led away by the two men he watched and said cryptically, "You'll see now it's wrong, but later you'll be thankful for this choice." Suddenly the door was thrown open. A shout echoed through the main hall. "I won't let that happen." Ryan appeared hurried and urgent, holding his master's sword in his hand. Reyna was overjoyed, her face glowing with happiness. Finally he had returned, and her anxious heart was at ease. She called out loudly to Rian. Contrary to her expectations, Bechop's face darkened. He crossed his arms sternly, looking at his son with no hint of joy. Siren looked up at him, but in his eyes was not the hopeful look like Gina's, but a resigned acceptance, waiting for whatever punishment would come, perhaps fearing to drag the boy into trouble, along with his own frustration and anger. Ryan shouted uncontrollably, "Who dares to kill my friend without my permission?" He stared coldly and decisively at the boy, speaking calmly. Just one sentence from him reveals his authority and status in this family. Meanwhile, the others below used all their words to defend him, but the boy couldn't understand. Just because he befriended you, he ended up with a bitter outcome, risking his life for the friendship of two people. He questioned him, why he didn't make any deadly mistake, just befriended you. Vina anxiously stood, unable to hide her concern for him and her younger brother. Seeing his son dare to question him for the sake of a commoner, he regarded human life as cheap. You don't need to make a deadly mistake to deserve death. Noble affairs are very complicated, more than you can imagine. Ryan shouted in frustration, his words sharp. Our family is handling this complicated situation, and you are enjoying the privileges of being a noble son. If that privilege forces you to kill your friend, then I don't want it. Bishop looked at him with a domineering gaze. He imposed his opinion on others. His words carried a strong class division tone. Kids, you ask why he must die. For befriending a noble. That means the relationship should be equal. He was being escorted by two soldiers. His indifferent gaze and firm declaration earlier only made him more irritated. Seeing him, he didn't hesitate to utter insults and contempt. Do you really think that commoner considers you a friend? Based on what? There are many people in this world who want to exploit nobles. Ryan shouted vehemently against his father's arrogant words. Siren would never do that. He looked at him out of the corner of his eye. Was his tone already growing impatient with him? Bishop looked at him. His firm words struck at his psyche. Why should I believe you? Prove that you and Siren are truly friends. His words left him stunned. He was dumbfounded. Prove how? He couldn't help but wonder. His heart sank. Rena, standing beside him, couldn't have expected her father to bring up this issue. She nervously looked toward him. He was staring intently at the boy. He smiled slightly, his eyes full of smug satisfaction. His thoughts were tangled. If I say I can't prove it, then that's the end of it. The question weighed heavily on him. After hesitating, he finally said, my feelings. He wondered if he could prove a person's feelings. He fell into confused reflection. But I feel like I can't speak recklessly. He tried to put himself in Siren's place. If I were Siren, I could have easily defeated him already. Suddenly a thought struck him. What if I am Siren? He glanced toward him, looking at his carefree face without a trace of worry or fear, but his eyes were resolute and strong. Looking at him, he fell into contemplation. Again, those eyes seemed to absorb everything, just like when they competed against each other. Looking straight into those eyes, he felt guided by him, recalling every word Siren had said before. Sometimes not focusing on trivial problems leads to better results. He followed the memory back to when they played cards together. When his cards didn't go as planned, he rested his head on his hand, showing frustration, while Siren held the ace of spades. Siren advised him, don't focus on the small parts of your opponent. Instead, look at the whole picture. He doubted Siren's words. Look at the whole picture. Siren flipped the ace of spades toward him. That way you can see their true intentions. He silently memorized this. Ryan felt encouraged. Look at the whole picture. Look at the whole picture. The person standing right in front of him now. His father was a second-rank noble head of the Ocean family and a level 4 knight with the black god hair trait. He gripped tightly the sword his master had given him. Silently, he affirmed to himself, right, this isn't just a father-son argument, it's a duel. He recalled 30 minutes earlier when he received the report and was about to leave, but was stopped by his master. You shouted at the old man, Master, why won't you let me go? Your friend might die. The old man ignored your urgency and remained calm and composed. That's right, you're talking about the kid who works in the library, right? He hesitated, then continued. But that kid is just a commoner. You were stunned into silence when you heard him say that. Master, I never knew you were this kind of person. You taught me differently. Your master couldn't believe that the person he had always deeply respected held such narrow-minded and archaic views just like his own father. At that moment, your emotions completely collapsed. You lost control and shouted out your feelings. If waving a sword could solve everything, then anyone could be my friend. The old man looked calmly at his student and began to explain. Ryan, don't you know what is most important to a noble? Isn't it natural for a noble to eliminate anything that threatens their family's status? He explained the disadvantages for your family. Have you ever considered the burden your friend carries when his value is no more than that of a fly? After becoming friends with him without thinking it through, when you heard these words from him, you clenched your teeth and choked back tears. Your shoulders trembled repeatedly. Tears uncontrollably streamed down your cheeks. Each teardrop seemed to prove your helplessness and inner pain. Ket advised you in a warm yet firm voice, don't think you can solve this problem through argument. You clenched your fist tightly. Your fingers kept tightening. You spoke to him with determination, but also showed signs of helplessness. But I can't just stand here and do nothing. I was the one who suggested becoming friends with him first. You raised your hand, your eyes blazing with fierce determination, and said loudly to him, I don't want to be a coward. Your words now challenged fate itself. Your determination was clear in every gesture and glance. Ket looked at you with a different gaze. He secretly admired you. Good determination, kid. Very emotional, honest, and pure, but that alone won't make you a great swordsman. I place a lot of hope in you, and I will support you. Ket held out his sword to you and handed it over. Fortunately, he really wasn't the old-fashioned class-biased type. He also warned you, I will let you go only if you bring this back with you. But if you're not even mentally prepared for this, don't dream of taking a single step out of here. You took the sword from your master. Your eyes stared intently at it. Your eyes reflected your resolve and seriousness. Now you must make the choice true to your own principles. Your eyes lit up, carrying confidence and unwavering determination. Master, I will never forget this favor. Every word of yours was like a vow engraved deep in your heart and mind, becoming your motivation to move forward. He glanced at you. Remember, abandoning a friend is like abandoning a part of your own body. Those words served as a warning and reminder to you. This is a duel fought with your very life. Back to the present in front of the mansion's main hall. Understanding the truth his master taught him, Ryan, sword in hand, tilted his head back and laughed loudly, the sound echoing through the mansion and giving others goosebumps. Father, we almost got defeated, you shouted in anger. You say we are friends, so why would I doubt that? Because I believe that Ciro and I are friends. You also added that the existence of Ciro's friend was proof of the friendship between you and him. Bishop was furious at these sharp counter-arguments. He clenched his teeth and hissed irrationally. This isn't a father-son argument, he shouted angrily. Even now, the prestige of countless noble families is collapsing. His words shocked the servants greatly. He kept spouting madness, saying if it could prevent the family's decline, he would even be willing to sever ties with his own son. As soon as he finished speaking, you and a group of 7 Vena maids shouted, Father, you stepped into a solemn stance, your voice firm and unwavering. If I must do that to save my friend's life, you bowed, placing your right hand over your chest, using the most solemn and respectful posture to express your attitude. Then I will leave gladly. Everyone is terrified by your actions. Bishop Furious suddenly stood up. His hands clenched so tight the veins bulged clearly. He shouted at this kid, raising his sword, if you truly think this kid is your friend, then bet your life right here. Without hesitation, you drew your sword. The sharp clang echoed as if saying your father-son relationship is about to end. He couldn't believe his eyes. His son had drawn his sword to fight him over a commoner. He looked at him and said hesitantly, Duc Quang, you even raised your sword to oppose your own father. You held your sword before you, blade pointing to the sky, your eyes flashing sharply. You weren't just pointing your sword at your father, you were showing your trust. Bishop clutched his chest, feigning helplessness. How could you have friends? You can't even get along with the other noble families. Maybe because you can't reach the level of other nobles, he tried to manipulate Ryan's mind. Now you're just keeping weaker people around to comfort yourself. But no, you lowered your voice deeply. This time, Father, you're wrong. Your eyes burned like fire, steady and unshakable, Filled with confidence and belief in yourself, you lowered your sword and spoke firmly. Ciro is my friend, and he's better than me. I want to help Ciro so he can shine brightly in a higher position. Your decisiveness left him stunned. Bishop, angry and ashamed, pointed at you, voice full of outrage. You've deceived the boy. You convinced him that a commoner can be friends with a noble. His words stabbed sharply at Ciro's pride. You denied it, but wasn't it Ryan who stood in front of you to protect you? Your voice carried care and protection. Ciro, stay there. I'll protect you. Ciro knew this was a decisive moment not only for himself, but also for the friendship he cherished. You called out to Ryan directly, and hearing your call, he froze. You took all the blame on yourself, sir. You don't have to be responsible for everything. I'll take responsibility for my part. You turned around in shock to look at him. Ciro remembered the moment your hand reached out to grasp his. From the moment you wanted to be friends with me, I had a feeling I'd have to stand at a crossroads, choosing whether to be friends with you or to save my own life. Your eyes filled with gratitude as you looked at him. Even if it means I'll die here, I won't regret becoming your friend. You bowed your head, eyes brimming with tears. His sincere friendship hadn't disappointed you. Your voice choked with emotion. That's right. Suddenly you lifted your face and shouted at Bishop, that's exactly what I mean. Those words echoed as a strong affirmation of your friendship and unwavering determination. Your heart filled with faith and willpower, knowing you had made the right decision. You shouted once more to affirm your friendship with him. Even if I'm isolated, we are still friends. Your resolute words left him speechless, only able to grimace and watch you. Ryan, standing aside, was moved to tears by your sincere words. She fell into thought, even if we're immature, we are still emotional beings. True friends never turn their backs on us. The servants were also moved. Everyone shed tears. Everyone having a friend like that means those barriers forever strip them of their right to equality. The head butler glanced toward Ryan and Ciro, muttering to himself with a sneer. Suddenly, a hearty laugh echoed throughout the mansion. How interesting. Everyone downstairs looked up in surprise. Vina happily called out to Mr. Gum. Standing upstairs looking down, he was full of life and delight, praising, I didn't think I'd witness such a touching scene at my age. Youth really is the best. Vina was extremely joyful and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Everything was fine now. If it were him, she thought things could be handled more easily with his intervention. But unlike her attitude, Bishop's expression was uneasy. He looked at Klum suspiciously. Father is here already. Vina told him it would still take a few days, but he spoke up. I arrived early because my friend ran away with a young lady. Then he sat down on the chair. Ciro was also very surprised by his appearance. He stared blankly in his direction, subconsciously recognizing his identity. That person is the general of Tomia and a level 3 swordsman, Rand's grandfather. He sat cross-legged comfortably, his tone enthusiastic, saying, Anyway, this place is still noisy as usual, isn't it? Youth truly is wonderful. He is the former head of the Clamp Ocean family. While he was chatting happily with everyone, the current head of the family, his son, did not look pleased at all. He looked solemn as he spoke to him. In this situation, it's not very good, sir. Our family's reputation has completely collapsed. He paid no attention to his son's expression and eagerly turned his eyes to the people below the dais. Don't be so quick to jump to conclusions. I've been standing behind observing for quite a while now, and clearly everyone here has a lot to say. So first, why don't we hear each other's opinions and see if we've really lost face or not? He took the opinion of the first person, the first witness, the eldest daughter, Vina Ocean. She looked delighted to express her thoughts about him. Although yesterday was the first time I met Siren, I could already tell he is a very smart and talented young man. She stood speaking like an orator. Everyone there directed their eyes at her attentively, listening to her evaluation of him. He crossed his legs, propped his chin with his hand, with an expression expecting his granddaughter's opinion. Moreover, Siren completed all the requirements in the contract and should have left the family today. Considering such circumstances, it's hard to say Siren approached Rin with any particular malicious intent. And as a result, I don't believe his actions have dishonored the family. He stroked his chin as if understanding her point, then snorted coldly. If that's the case, what do you think my second grandson? The next to give an opinion was the second witness, the second son, Zion. Although he hadn't spoken earlier, his expression showed no sympathy for him. He hissed through clenched teeth, I don't like that kid. Bishop next to him was very pleased with this answer, smiling smugly, silently praising his second son. That's right, I knew I could trust you. But he never paid attention to or cared about matters unrelated to himself. However, this has nothing to do with me. This half-hearted statement of his made him somewhat surprised, mixed with a little disappointment. He exclaimed, "What?" Bishop's face darkened as he turned to his son, who lacked conviction, his tone a bit reproachful. "What do you mean? You said you don't like him and then say you don't care." He crossed his arms, leaned back in his chair, eyes slightly closed, speaking apathetically. "That's right. I don't like the kid, but who he befriends is none of my business." He spoke bluntly. "I simply want this matter to end so we can depart for the royal palace." Rena was also surprised by this attitude, her eyes shining with admiration. "Wow, that's my little brother's attitude." He laughed loudly. "The opinion of this grandson is exactly why no place is better than home." Stroking his chin, then looking toward Ryan, "So let's conclude by hearing the opinion of the one who surely observed the child Siron the longest." He called the next person the deputy steward, the third witness, Deputy Steward Tamura. He cleared his throat, but then his attention fell on the head steward. He raised his hand near his chin and signaled him. In his heart, he thought, "I'm sure he's aware." Looking at Bishop's attitude, his eyes also glanced toward the deputy steward. His thoughts were too clear as he signaled him. "We are not people who express opinions, but those who obey the will of our master." The deputy steward finally said Siron's name. He glanced at the head steward and then honestly expressed his opinion about him. "He completed the tasks I assigned and did so very excellently. Moreover, he finished the work 6 months ahead of schedule." His words were like a thunderbolt on a clear day to the head steward, who did not expect him to disobey his orders. He gritted his teeth, thinking, "What the hell am I doing?" Bishop sighed heavily, his demeanor gradually losing the former grandeur. Clamp looked at the deputy steward and asked him, "Do you know if those two are friends?" He placed his hand over his chest respectfully and answered his master's question. "I know he often goes out with the young master, but I didn't know they were friends. But in my opinion, if he were an ill-mannered child, he wouldn't have been able to classify those 10,000 books." He couldn't believe his ears, surprised that besides his friend and kind Miss Gina, someone else in the mansion would speak well of him, the deputy steward. Ryan glanced at him with a smile. "Finally, someone admits your efforts and abilities." Rena put her hand on her chin, silently happy for him. Good, the atmosphere has completely changed. But that joy was crushed when she looked at her father. His gaze toward him remained unchanged. "He made you uncomfortable because time and time again someone spoke up for you. Especially since Clamp returned. Things have not gone according to his control. She knew the only person who wanted to punish Siren was her father." Suddenly a deep, powerful voice rang out. "No!" He stood up firmly and declared, "I cannot agree to this." As soon as he finished speaking, both Gina and Mr. Bishop spoke up simultaneously. Mr. Vina's father didn't understand why he changed his mind at the last minute. Just as she relaxed mentally now, it felt like ants crawling on a hot pan. Meanwhile, he looked even more radiant. Clamp quickly corrected himself. No. I understand the two consider each other friends." Siren and Rin stood before him, full of worry and tension. He looked at them, then pondered. "However, this is where it stops. If this relationship continues, rumors will eventually spread outside, and this could become a weakness that political rivals exploit against us." He listened carefully as his father spoke. Everything he was worried about was clearly expressed by Clamp. Jai, sitting beside, still paid no attention, looking indifferent. He began to state his viewpoint. "Everyone in our clan is an outstanding individual in the Jai Kingdom. Some are even preparing to take certification exams. Moreover, what else can I do when so many clans depend on me?" The maid, standing neatly listening to him, couldn't help but worry about their fate and their families. Because they are commoners, working for the nobility is already an honor. "Siro, you are a smart child. I believe you will understand." Rena turned to look at him with something to say, but choked on her words. But Ryan couldn't sit still any longer. He gritted his teeth, staring intently at him with a determined, unrestrained gaze. He looked at his beloved grandson with a mix of amusement and disbelief. He couldn't help but think, "I see you have a lot of potential and intelligence, Ryan. So why don't you understand what I'm saying?" He was confused inside. Renan was no less so. He wanted him to truly understand the responsibility on his shoulders. "You also know how heavy the lives of countless people resting on your shoulders are." At this moment, he turned to look at him, wanting to know how he felt and what he had realized after befriending him. "What do you think, Ciro? I want to thank you for teaching my innocent grandson what true friendship means. He didn't want this family to be condemned because of you." He asked for his opinion, but wondered if it could end here. Ciro could only lower his head. He quietly closed his eyes for a while without answering, then suddenly uttered two words that shocked both Clamp and Gina. Mr. Big Chop also didn't expect him to be so stubborn and unable to distinguish seriousness like that. Jai never cared about anything. Now he had to look at him with different eyes. Rian was also very surprised by his answer. He thought he would beg for forgiveness and cut off the friendship to save his own life. He couldn't have expected him to be that brave. He hesitated to call his name T. He looked sincerely and straightforwardly at Zero, unable to hold back, and hesitantly called his name. Zero placed his hand on his chest, looked at the man, and spoke from the depths of his heart. If I become a burden to Rin, then I don't mind never seeing him again. However, now he no longer hesitated or feared. He frankly spoke all his feelings. That doesn't mean I can't consider him a friend. He confidently and firmly affirmed Rin and I are friends. He couldn't let his friendship be bound or tainted by someone else's words. He said to Mr. Klum, as long as you consider those matters, I will obey any order you give. Rin's hand holding the sword trembled uncontrollably. He felt deeply ashamed. Once again, tears fell from his eyes because of it. In his heart, he blamed himself, but also felt relieved that Zero didn't have to die. Honestly, part of him felt that way. But Zero knew that abandoning a friend was like losing a part of himself. Rian widened his eyes looking at him. The lessons his master taught him during training were hard for him to decide on, but for him, he would rather lose his life to preserve the word friend. He felt deeply ashamed. He made up his mind, fine, after all, this isn't something up for negotiation. He pointed his sword straight up, loudly and decisively shouted a shout like, thunder rolling here, I declare. Mr. Klum and Jaina immediately feared his next action. She shouted, don't do that. I don't know what you're planning, but don't. She reacted that way because she wasn't sure if her younger brother was making a mature decision. If there was even a slight mistake, it could affect both his fate and that of the entire family. She couldn't let him make such a reckless decision. His sword plunged straight into the ground. The sound of metal hitting stone deafened everyone. He knelt down and plunged the sword deep into the tile floor. To Cyrun's astonishment, he declared bluntly in front of everyone, Irian Ocean, the third son of the Ocean family from this moment on, will become Sarun's sword. His oath thundered in the tense and suffocating air, making his father so angry he trembled. He clenched his teeth, grimacing in an ugly way. He roared, what is this? The entire mansion seemed to shake under the force of his fury. His roar echoed throughout every corner, idiot. The origin of the Knight's Oath dates back to when the kingdom of Tumia was first established. During a chaotic era, all the great and small nations fought over the Atafi colony. The strongest among them succeeded in uniting all and declared the founding of the kingdom of Tumia. So instead of being purged during the kingdom's unification, the defeated kings were allowed to directly govern their own territories and in the process created the Knight's Oath. The defeated kings had to kneel before the new monarch, swearing to become the sword only their master could wield. In return, they were granted noble status. That's the origin of the Knight's Oath and the birth of the nobility. So breaking the Knight's Oath meant becoming more despicable than a rabid dog. Rian turned to look at everyone, then smiled mischievously. What do you all think? Now I can't take it back, can I? Everyone was stunned, mouths agape at his unexpected decision. He still tightly held the sword in his hand, one foot grounded the other like a demon's stance. At this moment, he couldn't help but blame his master. It seems I caused a disaster this time, Rian. Giving me the sword wasn't so I'd do this. Sarun knelt beside him, took his hand, terrified. Ryan, what the hell are you doing? He didn't answer but glanced toward everyone. Mr. Clam's voice rang out, his face hardened, his features even more resolute. Ryan, if I'm really witnessing you say you'll become his sword, then that kid must be worthy, right? Answer me. He helped him stand and they both looked at the man. He continued asking, is he really that talented? Or is he only talented in your eyes because you yourself are useless? Hearing that you relaxed a bit, smiled confidently, placed your hand on your chest and shouted, the sword doesn't judge, it only protects. Everyone's faces darkened upon hearing your answer. Even Ciro was surprised. Suddenly, a man burst out laughing loudly in the tense air, placing his hand on his face and laughing heartily until his whole body shook. He had to admit you were right. Those immature kids at least have to reach this level to achieve greatness. While your father helplessly rubbed his forehead, your grandfather kept praising. Your mouth is sharp, but with that mediocre swordsmanship of yours, I feel sorry for your friend having to receive such a sword. Ryan couldn't believe his grandfather's words, stammering, Grandpa, Grandpa. He placed his hand on Sarun's shoulder, smiling to comfort and remind him, that's enough, it's over now. Though the boy isn't the sharpest sword yet, Ciro will never betray you. Take good care of my grandson. He patted his shoulder. He closed his eyes to savor the moment, looking at him with deep gratitude. Thank you for recognizing me. He pointed toward the head butler and ordered him, "Since you two swore to be lifelong friends, I can't just let you leave like that." The head butler took the carriage that Ciro was supposed to use to go home and brought his parents there instead. He quickly took the order from him. Yes, leaving right now. The two beauties looked at each other and smiled, putting on their hats together. The head butler was still astonished, screaming inside seriously. Looking up at the clear blue sky with clouds drifting slowly, he felt helpless, never understanding what nobles really think. Rian finally relaxed, smiling comfortably, expressing, "So refreshing." He flopped onto the bed, arms stretched out, and Ciro sat down beside him. He smiled and asked him, "Did you see my family's expressions?" Amazing. He felt deeply guilty inside. "Ryan, the Knight's Oath, you didn't have to do that for me." He sat up suddenly, startling him a little. "Ciro, I'm not doing this because you're my friend." His eyes locked onto him, determination blazing. "I'm different from your brother. I have the power to draw others in. I simply chose to bet my life on someone like that." He blushed shyly. "What?" Now I'm a little embarrassed. He thought, why did he suddenly say that again? He looked at him and sighed. "I feel pressured." Blushing, he said to him, but if you want to protect me, you'll have to train much harder." His words made him so angry he almost spat blood. Seeing that he worriedly asked Han what's wrong, he sighed weakly. "Nothing, it's just that you hurt us deeply." Venus suddenly opened the door and stepped in loudly, asking, "Ryan, did you really swear the Knight's Oath to become Ciro's sword?" Entering, she saw him slumped in a pool of blood, asking about his condition. What happened to him? He gathered what strength he had left to tell her to go outside. Ciro refused. "What are you saying? Just a moment ago, your sister helped a lot." He invited her inside. "Please come in, miss." Arrogant, yes. She brought important information from the opposition side. He regained composure, his mood tinged with worry. "What is it? What are father and grandfather doing?" She gently sat on the bed and told him, "They are ruthless, but after all, I already played the Knight's Oath card. They are planning what to do next." So anyway, she told him some very important news. Father is thinking about enrolling you and Ciro in the Kaizen Swordsmanship Academy. "Ciro, you said your swordsmanship talent is incredible, right?" "You said it yourself." He was confused, but to that extent, she smiled. "Of course, now you've become a member of the family. I told them all about your talent to see if they might be willing to invest something in you. They want your talent to help Ryan. Surely because of Ryan's future, they want to help you succeed." After hearing that you shouted at her, "Without my permission, who would dare let me go to the academy?" It was really hard for me to finally be able to play with Ciro as I wanted. She didn't say another word, kicked you down to the ground and stepped on you, then sighed and scolded you. "Show some mercy, you stupid bastard, causing such chaos and still wanting to do what?" You refused to accept it and shouted, turning your head to look at her with eyes sharp as knives, yelling, "After all, Ciro is going to the Magic Academy. Ciro will be a mage in the future. He has already unlocked his spiritual realm." She looked at you in disbelief. "What? Spiritual realm? Ciro has unlocked it already." "Wait, does that mean you swore a Knight's Oath with a future mage?" She looked at you, barely believing her ears. You angrily screamed, "Uselessness has its limits. Get out of here, old lady." She rubbed her chin and remarked, "That's a good thought. Since your spiritual world energy is quite high, this might actually be possible." Siren awkwardly replied, "Really, Vina," then praised nonstop. "You're amazing." According to what I learned at school, the more concentrated the energy, the stronger the spiritual world becomes. Being able to maintain that concentration while using a sword is extremely impressive. Hearing that your cheeks flushed red as you gently stroked your hair, Vina and Rin shared the same thought, saying, "Isn't that embarrassing?" She said she would talk to him about Ciro's path, and of course the condition for you to enroll in the Sword Academy would be included. Ryan, hearing that, was startled and shouted, "What? Then what will happen to my master?" Raina replied, "Master Ked already knows about this, so yesterday he ended the contract. Tomorrow morning will be when he says goodbye." You were even more shocked. Ryan tightly gripped his sword, his mind filled with sadness, secretly remembering that his master, that man, was about to leave this land. A butler opened the door and announced, "Master Ciro, your family has arrived and is waiting in the living room." The head of the household said, "You could meet them first if you want." Raina gently turned to ask your feelings. "How do you feel, Siren?" At first you just smiled, but then you couldn't hide your emotions anymore. Extremely happy, you jumped up and shouted, "I'm going." Siren quickly ran downstairs, causing the two butlers to worry. "Be careful on the stairs." Siren, you awkwardly said, "You can just talk to me like before. Being too formal is a little..." They panicked and responded quickly. Oh God, no. Please don't say that our heads would go missing. You smiled to reassure them. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. But they still firmly refused, and it didn't work. After a few short minutes, everyone was in front of the reception room door. Siren hurriedly pushed the door open to look inside at the people he loved most. Seeing two people inside, he shouted, "Mom, Dad." They were also very moved and shouted his name together. Siren ignored everything else and rushed like a little bird, finally finding its nest, burying himself in the warmth of his parents' arms. The three of them hugged tightly in overwhelming happiness. Siren looked at his family with a heavy heart. They had grown thin, surely struggling and worrying for him day after day. Siren's mother wiped away tears and reassured, "Don't worry, your parents are still fine." Vincent wondered, "But why did you suddenly call us? If your business is done, you should come home, right?" He suddenly asked excitedly, "Didn't they force you to stay?" "Not allowed to leave," you explained. "No, it's just that I was given a pretty good opportunity." He didn't understand anything, and Siren's mother was also puzzled about what good opportunity you meant. Then you proceeded to tell your family the whole story and the developments of the issue. After hearing it, they all froze, their faces pale and stunned. Vincent's eyes were wide open, his body motionless as he stared at his son. Then he forced a smile and said, "So you mean you became friends with a noble heir while working at the library? And that heir swore a knight's oath to you, and you were allowed to be friends with him?" Siren calmly replied, "Yes, that's right." Then he suddenly lowered his voice. Siren spoke the truth to his father, then grabbed his shoulders tightly, shaking him continuously. Tears streaming down as he shouted loudly, "How can someone as smart as you be so delusional? Has someone treated you badly? Is that right?" He was shaken almost to fainting, but still managed to say, "No, it's true." He held his beloved son tightly, crying uncontrollably as if about to say goodbye forever. "Oh my God! People say those who visit noble houses never return unscathed." Siren's mother tried to pull her husband away. Suddenly the door opened and the butler announced, "Young master, the head of the house has arrived." Three people entered at that moment. The big boss spoke first. "Pleased to meet you both. I am the head of this house, Big Boss Ocean." Ryan bowed slightly and said, "Hello, I am Siren's sword, Rian." Raina gently introduced herself. "I am Raina's eldest daughter. I've heard a lot about both of you." The two who witnessed the shocking scene paled immediately, then bowed respectfully and replied, "Hello, we are Siren's parents. How can such great people like you have her here?" Hearing this, they were a bit puzzled. "Oh my, haven't you heard from Siren yet?" Vincent, in a panicked state, asked anxiously with a trembling voice. "Are all the delusions he spoke really true?" Even sitting at the luxurious banquet table with all the delicacies, he still couldn't believe it. Impossible. Impossible. Vincent seemed lost in thought, while Siren's mother felt awkward. "Honey, there are too many dishes." Even after the meal, he still felt like he had fallen from the sky, his mind in turmoil. "Ren, what the heck?" She just received a cup of hot tea and gratefully thanked her. Vincent felt the suffocating atmosphere here, his mind wanting to scream at what was happening, his hand holding the teacup trembling as if it would drop. "Even though I don't know what a knight's oath is, there's no way they would treat a noble family's daughter so well. I need to clarify this." Thinking of that, Vincent spoke up. "Sorry, I'm glad my son is held in high regard by you, but I'm also very worried. It's unbelievable that a young master from a noble family like Ocean would swear a knight's oath with Siren." Bishop frowned and said, "To be honest, I'm a bit uncomfortable too." He continued, "However, for a militaristic family like Ocean, the knight's oath is absolute. If we discriminate just because of status differences, it would destroy Ryan's honor. So from now on, we will use honorifics. Please don't feel uncomfortable, and our family will fully support your son." The two gentlemen laughed loudly and said, "It's been a long time since I heard you say something right." Bishop was annoyed. "Dad, you're too loud." Siren silently thought he was a family head managing and deciding all major family matters. The decisive and proud words truly suit him, even though he struggles with deciding to place a commoner under his protection. He glanced at Jaina and saw her winking at him. He kept thinking as he saw her bright smile. Bishop returned to a serious expression and said, "To get straight to the point, your son is a spirit world user. The spirit world is not something you gain just by working hard. To put it bluntly, it's a talent you're born with." He continued, "From what I know, he aims to become a mage. So, if he wants to get an unofficial mage certificate as quickly as possible, I'm thinking of Alpheus Magic Academy, one of the 5 most prestigious schools in the country, which would suit him." Bitjob rubbed his chin and said, I'm not saying he has to go to that school to become a mage. But if he doesn't, it would be a disadvantage to that talent, and I don't recommend it. So he should study at Alpheus Academy to meet the Ocean family standards. Clump reminded consider their knowledge of Bit's son of his. Seeing Vincent's stiff expression, he immediately understood what his father meant. Then Beatrice got straight to the point. If your son graduates from a magic school, he will become a mage. At that moment, he understood and stood up abruptly. Our son will become a mage. Vincent thought of the Mage Academy. He began to stammer, impossible. This must be a dream. Our son, Bitjob continued. However, the biggest issue is his status. Vincent was startled when he heard him awkwardly explain that magic schools are selective and only allow noble descendants to enroll. Clump added, there is only one choice. Then he seriously said, we will adopt Ciro as part of the Ocean family. Vincent couldn't believe what he had just heard. He just stood there, stunned, his mind in chaos. What? Clump firmly insisted that this plan was the only option after we had allied with your family. He pushed out a papers of commitment. I have a cousin who still doesn't have children. If I add the boy's name to my cousin's family, all problems will be solved. However, we have no intention of taking your child away. It's only on paper. But through this, Ciro will become a noble. Vincent thought to himself, Ciro will become a noble. What luck does the boy have to get such an opportunity? But if I do this, it feels like this child is being taken away. He looked at his son with a troubled gaze, silently begging in his mind, please, son. Ciro, what should Dad do? Looking at his calm expression made him even more panicked. Could it be he had already decided? Then Vincent glanced at his father. His hand slowly touched the table. That big hand had always worked hard under the sun and rain for him. Then he clenched it tightly, making Vincent feel quite a bit of pain. Ciro's eyes shone with determination as he loudly refused that I will never be your son. I cannot become someone else's adopted child. Hearing this, his father panicked and shouted, Ciro. Venus, sitting opposite, explained, Ciro, this is just in name only. Of course, we will still treat your parents as your biological parents. You will achieve your dream and nothing will change. As soon as she finished, Clump spoke up, kid, you'll become a noble. Opportunities like this don't come often. Ciro remained firm and confidently said, if I have to change my father, I'd rather live as a commoner. Clump angrily shouted, commoners can't enter the magic school. He decisively replied, then I won't go to school. He tried to hit his feelings again, then you won't become a wizard. Bitjob and Gina were astonished. He insisted once more, then I won't be a wizard. That statement left Ciro's mother and Ryan frozen. Clump got even more agitated and yelled, Ciro, why are you so stubborn? This world isn't that easy. There are things you have to give up to succeed. If you can't do that, then is your dream just childish nonsense? He calmly answered, maybe so, sir, which made him feel dizzy. What tears welled up in Vincent's usually passionate and lively face. The awkwardness and sadness showed clearly. Ciro said, no matter how great my dream is, it's something I received from my parents. If parents are the root, then my dream is the fruit nourished by them. He recalled past memories, standing shoulder to shoulder with his family. Learning to read and getting the opportunity to work at the Ocean House are things I achieved because I have parents as my foundation. This is just one opportunity I've earned. It's nothing compared to countless other opportunities given by my parents. Ciro laughed decisively and said, now asking me to deny my roots is like telling me to die. I appreciate everyone's offer, but my only parents are my own. Everyone in the room fell silent after hearing him. No one said a word. Clump was so shocked that his eyes widened. In his heart, he thought, what is this feeling of guilt? Is this what the kid means? Suddenly, Vincent bowed down and said loudly, please accept Ciro as your adopted son. Please, I beg you all. He was a little embarrassed. Father Clump from afar said, I understand your intention, but what Ciro wants matters. He ignored what those beside him wanted to say. He just bowed his head and struggled to say, Ciro is not my biological son. After hearing her husband's words, Ciro's mother bluntly said, Vincent, what are you talking about? He still bowed his head and said, we cannot have children. He explained, we got Ciro because of an unexpected event. I'm sure you can tell, but definitely the boy comes from a noble family. The boy is so amazing. Clump and Jenna over here are getting more and more astonished. Vincent continued to express his feelings. If he became the adopted son of a noble family, then he would return to where he truly belongs. So this is not about a father abandoning a mother or rejecting origins. Bitjob over here quietly wondered if that was really the case. Looking at their family, he understood that everyone here had probably guessed that already. Ciro looks completely different from his parents now. He gently rubbed his chin, speculating, but do those words mean he wants to give up on his son? Ciro couldn't listen any longer. He was extremely upset. He grabbed his father's arm tightly and shouted loudly, "Dad, what are you doing? How can you say that without warning me first?" At that moment, he could only avoid his son's gaze. "Dad, sorry, but I'm grown now. I have to know the truth." Suddenly, Ciro seriously questioned, "Do you really think I don't know?" That sentence shocked Vincent deeply. His mood sank heavily. He struggled to say, "The reason I didn't ask you is because people only have one mom and one dad. I want that too. So why now do you want me to have 6 parents?" He panicked, frightened and heartbroken, his voice faltering. "I just don't want you to give up on your dream because of me." Tears began to fall from his eyes. Ciro decisively shouted loudly and firmly, "Who's giving up on their dream? As long as I try, the chance will come." But he was heartbroken, crying bitterly, looking at his father and asking, "Have you ever thought about how I feel? Who wants to be abandoned by their parents twice?" Vincent grabbed Ciro's hand tightly, trembling. "It's just that everything I did was my fault. Ciro, you will never abandon me." With that, he hugged his small son tightly, as if afraid of losing the loving tears pouring out like a stream. Vincent sobbed, pleading, "Please, please forgive this foolish father. You are everything to me." They held each other tightly, expressing their true feelings. Everyone around remained silent to admire the sacred family love. The tall and handsome Bishop, witnessing that scene, suddenly realized one thing: what we do for our children can sometimes hurt them. Clump replied, "Being a father and mother is really hard." He asked, "Haven't you also struggled a lot raising a child alone?" Bishop's eyes welled up with tears, his hands trying to hide them so no one could see. He was crying quietly, casting a glance at his son in front of him. Ryan was also crying. He was moved by the deep affection between Vincent and Ciro. Suddenly, Bishop said, "I heard that at Anfia's Magic Academy there is a special consideration." "Dad might be able to help with that," Glam wondered, "What can this old man do? How could I possibly persuade that stubborn Anfia's guy?"